on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. No McElroy today. He will be back tomorrow. So McElroy out today. Richard Hendrix will be in at 8 a.m. this morning. He'll give us 2 hours of basketball insight right here live on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. We had a big weekend of college basketball, big weekend at the Combine, a lot of news that we got to get to, a lot of things that we have to discuss and want some of your thoughts on it. You can be a part of the show. Tweet in at Mac and Cube. You can text into the show 205-834-9450. You can also call the show 800-239-9569 as we had a historic weekend in Lexington as Auburn goes to Rupp and wins for the first time since 1988. That was a 20-game losing streak for the Auburn Tigers at Rupp Arena. 94-78. And it was not without a couple of these lulls that seemed to happen to the Auburn basketball team the last 4 or 5 games out, even in wins, where honestly, it looks like a team that's just bored. And I made the trip up to Lexington, was able to go see the game. Great atmosphere, great people. The people of Lexington always have treated me well. I love the fans there. Even the Kentucky fans that we sat around that knew that a couple of us were rooting for Auburn, had some great conversations about different things. Just a lot of fun being around those guys. Always cool to be in a historic arena, watching a historic program like that, and then to see Auburn go up there and win was really cool to be able to see in person. But the atmosphere was fantastic. The arena did get loud, and I mean, it felt like a big Kentucky basketball game. But it's an Auburn team that every now and then you run into a couple of lulls. And I actually spoke to a friend of mine that's close to the team, we'll say. And I asked him straight up, and I said, not that this is a complaint about this one, because this team looked pretty good here. And it was impressive what they did. I said, but did they just get bored at times? And he kind of laughed and said, yeah, I think so. There's times that maybe it's hard to just stay as focused in, as dialed in. But the beautiful thing about this Auburn basketball team is you get Janai Broome, who is neutralized to an extent in this game. And all of a sudden, it's Tahad Pettiford stepping up, going 6 of 10 for 21 points, doing just, I'm going to tell you this, seeing Tahad Pettiford in person, it gives you a different respect for how quick that young man is and the things that he's able to do off the dribble. And you go get a game of a lifetime. I mean, just a completely bonkers, out of your mind game from Miles Kelly, who drops 30 points in Rupp, 10 of 17, 9 of those field goals from behind, 9 of those 10 field goals from behind the three-point line, 9 of 14 from three. And I'll say this, and I asked Richard Hendrix this last night. I'll ask him again on air today for you guys. I have never seen an individual bank perimeter shots on consecutive attempts, not to mention from opposite wings of the floor, as Miles Kelly did. I don't believe he called bank on those, but somehow, some way, like it's even on accident from the wing to be able to bank back-to-back three. I guess that's just, you could say, that's what comes some of the guys behind us. This is what kind of day it's going to be for Auburn, I guess. Well, he would go on to hit 7 more. So Miles Kelly, 10 of 17, 30 points for Auburn. He is the first Auburn basketball player to drop 30 points at Kentucky since, John?
Anyone? Will go since 84.
I wasn't even really asking the year. I was asking more the individual. It hasn't happened since 1969.
Whew. Okay.
John Maylett?
Really?
Anyone seen the tape?
No, we've landed on the moon since.
John Maylett dropped 42 in a loss at Rupp in 1969. I'm going to be real. I hadn't seen the tape on John Maylett. Not even sure I knew the guy existed, ever. That's the first John Maylett drop we've had on this show. So Auburn goes up to Rupp and gets that win. Miles Kelly, unbelievable. And a lot of the reasons that Broome maybe wasn't as effective, and I'll say this, in person, Amari Williams, beyond impressive. He had 13 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists. He could have had 4 or 5 more assists easy. But he holds Broome to 3 of 9 for just 9 points. He was 3 of 7 on free throws also, which was not great. Broome struggled a little bit from the free throw line, just not his best game, which also, if you want to kind of go back and forth with, I know some people like to say this time of year, well, it's good to get the loss out of the way, or it's good for this to happen. You always kind of scratch your head and say, you really want that to happen right now? Is that really good that this took place then? Could be good for this Auburn basketball team to look at it and say, hey, we get into the tournament, the postseason, whatever that is. We don't just have to lean on Janai Broome. We have other guys that can step up, and there have been other guys that have stepped up at moments for this team. It's one of the beautiful things about this team is whether it was a Miles Kelly or whether it's been a Chad Baker-Mazara, but it's a Hod Pettiford. I mean, you think about the 3 that Pettiford hit against Alabama. You think about Chad Baker-Mazara making a couple of plays here and there, and he had a really good game against Kentucky. 22 points. He had 3 steals. He had a block. Now, there was some extra, but that's going to kind of be part of it. Watching he and Bruce go back and forth with some of the, how should I say it? I'll just say extras. With some of the add-ons from Chad Baker-Mazara. It's like Bruce knows it's there. He knows he has to manage it a little bit. I think he's gotten past the point of just saying, I have to make this go away and have to completely control this young man. But they have a little give and a take of, all right, enough's enough, or kind of laughing it off a little bit, or kind of Baker-Mazara letting Bruce know, like, it's fine. I'm not out of control here. But it was kind of cool to see that in person as well. 18 turnovers for Kentucky in this game. You go back and talk about that Auburn defense and what they're capable of doing, limiting teams from behind the perimeter, able to get the ball out. And I think it's just, you see some of the hands and the length of Auburn's defense, able to find a way to get the ball out. They were able to do that against Kentucky again. And Auburn outscored Kentucky 21-9 off those turnovers. Those 18 turnovers, the most in a game, the most in the last 2 seasons for the Wildcats. It was not a great game for Kentucky. It never felt like they had a real feel or a real opportunity to get back into the game. Even when they did make a couple of runs and Auburn had those lulls that we mentioned, it did never feel like they were going to find a way to win the game. I think they were 1 for 10 from 3 at halftime. It won 3 at half. I mean, part of getting into a game and winning a game and getting back into a game is you're going to have to shoot, and Kentucky wasn't shooting well. Not until Berea late started dropping threes, and he's got a nice stroke, but it's just that wasn't going to be enough. So Auburn goes to 10-2 versus AP-ranked teams. They are the 3rd basketball team all time with 10 more wins against AP-ranked teams before the conference tournament. All time. It's the third time Auburn's had 3 20-point scores in a game the last 20 seasons. Keep in mind, it wasn't Janai Broom either. So the alternatives, the waves that Auburn can hit you offensively, the depth that they can bring in defensively, the different things that they can do with different guys. Miles Kelly's not afraid to take a shot, I can tell you that. And they snap a 20-game losing streak at Rupp Arena. Fast break points, Auburn outscored Kentucky 22-10. If you're going to complain about something in this game, it might be on the boards. It felt like Kentucky dominated Auburn on the board. The problem was Auburn shot 52% from the floor, 12-26 from 3. So there weren't a ton of rebounds necessarily to get to be able to control the game and control your opponent. But I did think Amari Williams was great. I did think Berea looked good in the last maybe 5 minutes of the game when it didn't really much matter. But Auburn gets that win at Kentucky, just another notch for Bruce Pearl, and continues to put him up on that pedestal as one of the all-time great faces of Auburn athletics. On the other side of that, Auburn goes down at Tennessee, 79-76. Bama goes with 23-6 on the season. Tennessee 4-5. You could sit here and write up a laundry list of things that went wrong late for Alabama in this game. Had opportunities to be able to pull this out. Up 5 late. You don't get a couple of free throws to go down. You don't box out on a free throw attempt. You get a 5-second call on an inbounds, which just seems, I don't know, it's like something that just cannot happen. There's no way that you can allow that to take place at that moment. And I will give Nate Oates credit. Something that we have not heard from some coaches in this state, and something that I think we all want coaches to say and go to after a game. Having that 5-second violation, giving the ball back to Tennessee, and then giving up almost a half-court shot for the game winner, and the Vols get the win. Nate Oates had this to say after the game.
I'm going to take most of the blame in the last 30 seconds. It's on me. Got subbed our bigs out to get the rebound before I should have. Shouldn't have subbed them out until after we secured the rebound. So that was on me, and then I had a chance to call timeout. Coaches can call timeouts on the underneath out of bounds play. And at 4, I should have called it. I thought we were getting it in, and that's on me. And then we probably could have had better guys in, being a little smaller at the end with the 3.8 on the clock to make sure they didn't get the ball up the floor. So we work on end-of-game situations in practice and expect our players to be good at them, and I was not good for the last 30 seconds today. So I feel like I failed these guys, you know, for 39 and a half minutes. They outplayed them. They were up 4.
What a relief to hear that. To hear a coach actually say, I botched part of the game plan. I botched part of what should have happened. That part's on me. Really cool to just hear a coach go out and say, man, I commend Nate Oates. I give him a lot of credit for that. A lot of respect for a guy to go out and just say, could have done a better job. This is how I could have done a better job. It's on me. Nothing else we can do about it. Ton of respect for that. I mean, if I'm an Alabama fan, I love hearing that from my coach. I don't like seeing the breakdowns on defense late. There's 3 seconds left in the game. How you can just hover down around the free throw line when you know they're going to have to launch a 3 doesn't matter. What pass are you trying to take away there? It's just incomprehensible that you would sit back and not attack the basketball at that moment. It was a nice little potential accidental screen, and you're able to come off and knock down that 3 to be able to get the game winner. I mean, listen, Tennessee executed, so you give them credit. Meshack's first 3 of the game, he was 1 for 1 from behind the three-point line, had 11 points. He was just 3 of 5 from the floor, and he hits that game winner against Alabama. Tennessee shot 43% from the floor. Bama just 41. Bama was 9 of 21 from 3, 17 of 26 from the free throw line. I mentioned a couple of slip-ups late where that could have been different, but this wasn't a game statistically that Tennessee dominated by any stretch of the imagination. Alabama out-rebounded the Vols 42-33. Mark Sears, 24 points, 7 of 16 from the floor, 4 of 9 from behind the three-point line. I mean, there was some good for Alabama in this game against maybe the best defensive team in the country, if not a top 3 defensive team in the country. Sears, the first SEC player in the last 20 seasons with 4 straight 20-point games, all versus ranked teams. 4th Division I player to do that over the last 20 seasons. Aiden Holloway had 11, 3 of 6 from behind the three-point line. And it's not as though one Tennessee player just offensively went off. I mean, Zakai Ziegler had 15, Chaz Lanier had 18. We mentioned Meshack, those 11 points, including that game-winning 3 from the logo. But it's the second buzzer beater this season for Tennessee. Jordan Gainey went coast to coast to beat Illinois. And Tennessee, like I said, trailed 76-72, 36 seconds left. At that point in time, if you were to go to the analytics, ESPN Analytics had Alabama with an 89% chance to win the game. And then that 7-0 run for Tennessee closed it out. 8th win against an AP-ranked team this season for the Vols. That's a program record. And they've now won 4 straight games by single digits for the first time since 2001. Alabama out of the regular season SEC title race. That now goes to Auburn. Auburn was going to get a share of it with the win against Kentucky, but needed that Alabama loss to get it outright. So now Bruce Pearl gets an outright SEC regular season championship again. And just another thing that you look at with Coach Pearl and say things that he has done that has not been done in 10, 15, 20, 30, ever in the history of Auburn basketball. It's like we're kind of running out of those things to say. Or either the list is just getting too long to continue to repeat those. It's the 3rd time Bruce has an SEC title. John, you want to take a shot at how many Auburn had all time before Bruce Pearl arrived?
4.
No.
Fewer?
2.
Ugh.
2 regular season SEC championships all time before Bruce Pearl arrived. He has 3. 3. Who was our guy talking about the statue on Friday? I don't think anybody's going to argue if it were to go up. There will be no arguments when and if, I'm just going to say when, the day arrives that Auburn wants to put Bruce's statue up, because he has, I keep telling people, he is knocking on the door of being the greatest coach in Auburn history. Not basketball, Auburn history. Who are you going to put up against him? Who's the argument? Because your immediate argument is, well, he doesn't have a championship. Okay, so Chiswick's up there? And then people are going to say, well, no. But he got your championship that you say you have to be there. It's just it's an interesting thought. We'll ask Paul Feinbaum about it. On the other side, like I said, Richard Hendrix is going to come in studio at 8. He'll be with us for 2 hours today talking Alabama hoops, Auburn hoops, the SEC, the NCAA tournament. We'll talk to him about some of his playing days. A lot to talk about with Richard Hendrix for 2 hours. It's going to be a fun conversation with him. And we'll talk a little more SEC hoops with Paul Feinbaum next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. 7:18, Monday, March the 3rd, right here on Jocks 94.5. First show of March on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. No McElroy today. He'll be back tomorrow, but Paul Feinbaum joins us each and every Monday at this time, thanks to our friends at Craneworks.
Lift it, load it, grade it, grind it, move it, haul it, rig it, dig it, Craneworks, Rentalworks, yeah! The big dog's got it.
Paul Feinbaum on Mac and Cube in the morning is brought to you by Craneworks. Lift it, buy it, rent it, the big dog's got it. Now, Paul Feinbaum.
Paul, always great to have you in on a Monday. I think I've actually asked you this question or a similar question before. And we've talked about Bruce Pearl being the greatest basketball coach in Auburn history. I think that has come and gone. How many coaches in Auburn's athletics history could you realistically place ahead of Bruce Pearl at this moment?
I think you'd be hard-pressed to find very many. I mean, certainly Pat Dye and Shug Jordan are always at the top of their list. But, I mean, I think they would all be – I mean, Mount Rushmore has 4 people on it. I think there's room for Bruce Pearl on Auburn's Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, he's a guy that we've talked about so many things that haven't been done in 20 years or ever, and things of that nature, and the list continues to grow. It's hard to say that he's not one of, if not the most important coach in Auburn athletics history with what he's doing right now. From an SEC's perspective, is the tournament going to be dominated as much as maybe the league will represent itself in this field? 12 teams looks like the minimum right now. The record will be broken regardless. It's just going to be a matter of by how many. Do you foresee real success for the league top to bottom in the postseason as well?
Well, I think the first number is how many are in. You've established that, and I think on Selection Sunday, that will be probably the second story. Usually the number 1 seed and the 4 number ones are always at the top of the list, and then who did the best, which will be the SEC. I think ultimately it is really going to be more important to see where the SEC schools go down the road. If you start getting a bunch of first-round knockouts and second round, that becomes a lesser issue. What's critical for the SEC is the Final Four, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to. I really think it's incumbent upon the SEC to win it all. And we've established that it's been so long. It was the 2012 season when Kentucky with Anthony Davis won the national championship. And for a league as great as the SEC has been in the last couple of years, that's really too long. And I think that, if the SEC gets 13 in and 1 or 2 in the Final Four, and Houston or Duke wins it all, I think the narrative is going to be Duke won the national championship, and what happened to the SEC. I know that is cruel, but it's the reality when you have when you're over 20% of the field.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. It's not something that we have expected per se going into a lot of NCAA tournaments, but I think we would look at this field now and say the SEC should win a national championship just based on the amount of teams that they have that could be possible. And wouldn't surprise people that they would go on and they would win it. When you look on the Alabama side of things, why do you think so many coaches, Paul, struggle to do what Nate Oates did after this game and essentially take a lot of the blame for how things went late when things didn't go right? I think a lot of people will think that we're referencing just Hugh Freeze here, but it's not necessarily pointing a finger at him, although it was a little bit of an issue last year and a lot of people didn't like it. But so many coaches just find it impossible to admit that they screwed up in game when they meet the media after the game. Nate Oates essentially taking almost 100% of the blame on himself. Why is this such a problem for coaches to do on a regular basis?
Well, because I think it's their makeup. They know in their mind, Cole, and you've played for some of these guys, that they make the right call. I mean, I've asked coaches before, how did you lose that game? And I'm going to give you one name, and you'll appreciate it. It was Steve Spurrier. He said, I called the perfect play. I mean, that's how they think. Basketball is a little bit different because there's so many variables in football. If you call the right play and it doesn't get executed, it's hard to explain that. But in basketball, there's so many factors in a game that Alabama should have won and clearly blew. And, you can say it. There's a million reasons why Alabama blew that game. But Nate Oates took that all away, and he said, it's my fault. And I think it's just smart. By the way, that game at Tennessee, important in a seeding standpoint, but Alabama can get it right back with a win over Florida this week. it just was by saying what he did. It was people were able to turn the page quickly, and instead we're talking about what a great coach Nate Oates is, as opposed to the fact that he has now lost two of the most critical games coming down the stretch at home against Auburn and obviously on the road at Tennessee. And I just think he is a one-of-a-kind coach as well. As much as we want to praise Bruce Pearl, Nate Oates is not quite in his own league yet, but he's not far from it in terms of what he has done for this program.
I think you make a great point about being able to turn the page and people spending maybe less time focusing on the things that went wrong because you took that blame and they're able to move on to what potentially could be next. You brought up kind of Bruce again and sort of where he stands historically. You look at Bruce Pearl and you look at Rick Barnes. You could talk about another team. I mean, Pitino's got championships, but you could look at Kelvin Sampson at Houston. Is there a coach that you look at in this field that has a real chance? I mean, Tom Izzo's team's great this year, but he doesn't necessarily need a championship. It feels like there are a lot of kind of old school guys that this would cement their legacy, or this would be one that sort of caps a magical career if they could get that national championship. Is there one that you feel like it means more to or needs it more than the other to sort of cement their legacy all time in this year's NCAA tournament?
Well, I think you mentioned Kelvin Sampson because, I mean, he really has been a top-flight coach, and he's had some Houston teams that probably should have won it all. I think there are always those coaches, but I think this, in terms of this year, there's so many. He is clearly at the top of it because I don't know too many other. I mean, Izzo has won national championships. He's been to a ridiculous amount of Final Fours. But ultimately, there is that one guy. It's like we see that in football. We don't see it as much because most of the guys have moved on. But ultimately, that's how we define people. And I know it's a cliche, and you could just rinse, repeat. But national championships are where it's at. In basketball, a Final Four will take you probably farther than anything else. There's nothing quite like it in college football. Losing the national championship in college football does not carry very well. Just ask the coach in Tuscaloosa this morning. But a Final Four, it's a conversation piece. And a Bruce Pearl or Nate Oates never wins a national championship. The day they leave their job, it will still be Bruce Pearl, whose brilliant career at Auburn was highlighted by a national championship run in 2019 and let's say 2025. Football, it's more when Frank Beamer retired. Yes, his national championship game appearance was mentioned, but it was also the fact that he couldn't win one. Pat Dye, sadly, you and I both know how great he was, but the missing ring really was unfortunately too much a part of his legacy.
Paul, before we let you run, you mentioned the coach in Alabama. There will be no broadcast of the spring game. You'll have to be there in person to see it. This is such an interesting topic specifically for when Greg and I have talked about it for you and I because of how the networks are involved and how important that inventory is to the networks. And now that seems to be rapidly diminishing of us being able to actually watch spring football games at all or specifically on television. I don't blame Alabama for doing it. I know why these teams are not doing it, but what does it mean in the grand scope of things that teams are just going to choose not to play a spring game or have some kind of a showcase or carnival and then not even put it on television?
Yeah, I mean, I understand it like you do, but I also think it's somewhat disappointing for fans because, Cole, I don't need to tell you how many times on the Monday after an Auburn or Alabama spring game, somebody called you and knew more than you did because they saw the spring game and they saw this wide receiver do or running back do unbelievable things. I mean, I always used to laugh because I think we read too much into it, but it was an inflection point of the spring. Now it's not. I think the most important thing for spring games is for fans to participate. Now, again, you can. A lot of these young guys who are walk-ons and may have the biggest moment of their career in a spring game, and that's on national television too, by the way. But ultimately, I think we are just in a different era now when coaches are far more paranoid than they've ever been. And the idea that someone was going to glean something from a spring game is pretty laughable. But I'll also say this in terms of the networks, Cole, and you know this because you've done all these games. These games were not exactly being showcased anymore. I mean, I think last year there was, I think Alabama may have been one of the few SEC schools, if the only one, that was actually on network television. Most of them have been moved to digital. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they're not quite getting the showcase they were 15 or 20 years ago.
No, it's totally fair. Great stuff, Paul. Always appreciate the time. Great catching up with you. We'll do it again next week.
See you soon, Cole. Thanks.
Paul Feinbaum, always brought to you by Craneworks. He joined us Mondays right here on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. And I want to continue that conversation about Alabama's spring game. Is it disappointing for you that you're not going to be able to watch it on television? Is it something that now you'll make a journey down there to Tuscaloosa to watch it? And then just kind of where we are with spring games in general. I get it. I understand it, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. Do you? 800-239-9569. Tweet in at Mac and Cube. Text in 205-834-9450. Paul joined us on the Buyers Right hotline. For all your insurance, financial, and HR needs, it's Buyers Right Insurance, a Higginbotham partner. We'll have a little more conversation around not just Alabama, but college football spring games when we return next on Mac and Cube in the morning. We've gotten mixed comments on this before, and that is college football spring games. Do you like them? Do you hate them? We had almost split down the middle reviews the last time we discussed this of just the games in general. Most people saying, well, I think if it leaned one direction, most people would have said that love it for my team, not going to just watch them all in general. And Paul's right. I had kind of forgotten about the fact that I think all but maybe Georgia and Alabama, or maybe just Alabama, were all digital last year. But also, I will say that I don't think that necessarily means something in a negative sense, because there is a massive push to that platform, specifically from Disney and ESPN. So if you were to push them all there, a lot of those fans are going to want to see them, and maybe they go sign up for ESPN Plus to be able to go watch their team's spring game. But according to Nick Kelly on Friday, he reports that Alabama will not have a live broadcast of the event. The admission will be free. Game is set for noon on Saturday, April the 12th. And it was on ESPN in 2024, SEC Network Plus in 2023. Now, we know that the formats of these are going to change. We know that a lot of things are going to be different. Hey, Kalen DeBoer, middle of last week, saying a lot of times here, the 8A game, it's been more of a practice, and there's been some scrimmaging, not necessarily much of a game. He said, even when I was at Fresno State, we called it the spring preview, especially this year. There's some things we're working through with some injuries and so forth, so it'll definitely be modified. We want to try to have some type of event around April the 12th. I think that if you're talking about scaling that back even further, that would lean to me that you'll have even less of a game format. And one thing that these coaches, the reason that it's never going to go to a real scrimmage against other teams, like some people wish for, that it's never going to happen, is they do have the ultimate control over it. It can go their way. It can act as though they want it. The people that they want to be in for a certain amount of plays or for against certain defenses or certain looks, it can be exactly how they want it and how they're going to plan it. And then moving forward with that, you can control who all sees it. Now, it doesn't matter. Doesn't think people are not going to have their phones out, tweeting highlights, different things of that nature. But do you like it? Are you okay with it? I don't know if anybody's just going to say, yes, I love the fact that they're not doing that. But does it bother you that Alabama spring game is not going to be on television? Does it bother you that you're not going to be able to watch a lot of these spring games if it's your team? You can tweet into the show, at Mac and Cube. Louis DeArmond tweeting in, why are we not televising it? It's not because some other coach may see something. It's because we don't want the four-string wide receiver who the coaches decided to make feel good about himself, feel so good he decides to leave because now everyone saw it. Well, I think you're actually working against yourself there. It's not because some other coach may see something. Well, but then you say the four-string wide receiver did so good and feels so good about himself he wants to leave. He's not just going to leave. If more times than not, someone's going to see him and say, hey, you can come start here. Or we'll give you a little more NIL money here because we think we can help you more. I think that actually is a full circle comment that both could be true. But I'll say this. If the second half of your statement is what you find to be true in the way that you feel like it would go, would four-string wide receiver not go out there, let's say in a Saturday scrimmage, catch 8 balls for 215 yards and 3 touchdowns, still not feel good enough about himself to say, I'm not starting here, I'm four-string here, I can go somewhere else and start? I personally feel like the answer to that is yes. I don't think it has to be in front of a camera. I don't think it has to be on ESPN. I mean, how many guys we see hit the portal every year that we've never heard their name? You think they just do that because they like themselves? They think they look good in the uniform? I think there's a large number of them that did something good in practice and say, why am I not started here? I did that against that guy. And they feel like they should be because of what they have done, even though we didn't see it. Now, some of them just haven't done anything, and their parents are telling them that they're the best thing ever, and they want to leave. They want to get out. So go. Good for you. Jamie Bailey tweets in, yeah, I'm disappointed the Bama spring game won't be televised. I'll try to go in person. I'll have to rely on X and YouTube to get reports on how it went. I'll say this. It'll probably show up on YouTube somewhere. Somebody's gonna sneak the tripod in there with a little one stand for the phone thing that normally the TikTok creators are using. And they'll be up there in the stands filming it.
And if not that, there are a bunch of people that typically will stream stuff that's on digital directly to YouTube. So the ESPN or whatever may just pirate it that way. So,
but is this? It sounds like this isn't even going to be recorded to broadcast later on digital. Like this sounds like there's not going to be anything at all.
Just straight up with that. Whew.
Just nothing. Maybe I'm wrong on that. That's the way I read it. So if you're not going to get anything, it's even more surprising, to be honest. And that's the way I saw it. And I could be wrong about that. But it doesn't feel like you're even going to have a replay option here, which to me would be It's like Greg said last week when we talked about it. These things are going to be replayed 30 times before the season. That's eating up a lot of inventory for the networks. So, listen, if they're gonna record it and show it again later, then great. But I think what's happening is either the coaches are stepping in and saying, listen, we just don't want it out there on that platform that way, or it's going to be so far removed from a game type situation. And maybe people are looking at what Ole Miss did last year and say, yeah, we can't even really put that on TV. I don't think people want to see a hot dog eating contest and a dunk contest and like bobbing for apples and throwing baseballs at the target trying to dunk the coach. Maybe some people would be into that. I don't know. But I think what might be happening, I'll try to get answers to these questions. I haven't put the time into it just yet, but I will.
It just feels weird. Whether or not it should or should not, it just feels weird not having it. Whether or not, even if you were a fan, it didn't feel like you would want to watch it, you might catch it down the line. It just feels weird not having it broadcasted at all. For a bigger school like your Alabama, your Texas, your Florida, for schools like that.
Correct. And see, I would push back a little bit on what Paul said about how he feels like they've diminished a little bit because of where they've been. As soon as I saw that 2 years ago, I immediately thought to myself, this is just Disney trying to push people to plus.
Yeah.
So you put one on one network and then you say, okay, well, if you want the other, what was it at the time? 11, I guess, or 14, 13, then you're going to have to get ESPN Plus, or you're going to have to get Disney Plus and get it for free, whatever that is. Like, we want you going to our streaming service to have to get these. And think about it. Even if it's only 20% of every SEC fan base that wants to see it, and you had 12 of those or 13 of those on the digital platform, that's a lot of people that are at least going to go there to see it. That's what I initially thought it was. So, I mean, I'm bummed about it because I know people say that it's lame and they don't like it. You can't get it. I do get things from it. I watch them all. And there's certain takeaways that I get. How's a guy going to fit in? How's a guy going to be plugged in? And it does sometimes arrive under false pretenses. We get certain players that show up and look great, and then we never hear from them again. We gave you multiple members of Alabama and Auburn teams over the last 10, 20 years that have blown up in spring games and never seen the field. So it's not like definitive. It's not like it's a one for all that, yeah, it's going to be this way or turn out that way. But I think all of us realize, too, that there's only so much Brewers Twins on a Wednesday that we can watch in June or July. I mean, there's usually only one Mayweather pay-per-view, right? There's only one Kentucky Derby that we can get all excited about. There's only one Coca-Cola 1100 that we can get excited about in the summer to watch. Give us some football, you know? We'll see how it plays out. We'll see how it goes. Spring games, not real sure, not real certain about how they're going to go, what the future is going to be. But there is some other college football news that we need to get to involving the future of it. We'll discuss that right after this on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, Monday, March the 3rd, 7:44 a.m. right here on Jocks 94.5. You can listen online, jocksfm.com. The app is in the App Store, iPhone, Android. Download that for free. Richard Hendrix going to hang out with us starting at 8 a.m. So 2 hours. We'll talk some college hoops, talk some NBA, talk all kind of basketball with Richard. Is obviously from the SEC's perspective this season, there is a lot to discuss. A lot to discuss, too, with Game Day Men's Health. If you are feeling on edge, if you're getting poor sleep, it could be the effects of low testosterone, and Game Day Men's Health wants to help you today. Here's what you do. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com right now. You schedule a free consultation, and you're going to be able to walk in the door, get a free PSA test, free testosterone test. They're going to know exactly where you are, and they're going to be able to present different options to help you feel better, sleep better, have more energy, and just get through your day on a more healthy basis. Game Day Men's Health has multiple weight loss programs for you. They have peptides now in stock now. A lot of different ways that they can help your health. Locker room environment, great people, not going to try to press you into things that you don't need. So go get that no-charge consultation and just find out where you are. GameDayMen'sHealth.com. They want to help your health today. And don't forget, they offer minimal upfront cost in the programs that they offer. Visit GameDayMen'sHealth.com. All right, a couple of things from college football quickly. Over the weekend, also some reports out about where things are headed from the perspective of revenue sharing in college football. And for me, I look at this as somewhat problematic. A lot of people may have looked at this and just says, oh, turn a page, no big deal. I have said for a while that I don't think this is going to go as smoothly as people believe. I don't think this is going to be the end-all be-all that a lot of people want it to be. March 1st was, in theory, supposed to be the deadline for schools to opt into the House settlement. The NCAA sent out guidance on Friday, softening that deadline with additional clarification. So the NCAA has moved the formal House opt-in date to June 15th. The update also says schools can now make payments to athletes if the court approves the settlement. The enforcement of that is going to be almost impossible, in my opinion. And the fact that we are now having a little bit of back and forth and some uncertainty and a lack of a little bit of clarity as to exactly when this is going to be enacted, how this is going to be enacted, and what it's going to mean and what it's going to contain only goes to show me the amount of confusion that is going to come with this. And I just don't think that this is going to be the, hey, look, now everything's good. We can move forward without NIL. Now, real NIL is going to stick around, but false NIL is still going to be a part of it. And then what's going to be the underbelly of this? What's going to be the workaround? What's going to be the go-between of finding ways to add benefit to players coming to play for you as opposed to going and playing for somebody else? Because that's what we don't know the answer to, exactly how that's going to look. And to me, this only brings a little bit more confusion as to exactly how that's going to operate and maybe where that's going to be. So I just don't think this is going to be sort of the end-all be-all of, hey, watch out because now we've got this thing figured out. Not going to look that way. It's just not what it's going to be. I think there's going to be a lot of confusion with this. I think there's going to be a little bit of lack of clarity. And I think there's going to be problems that come with it. And a lot of people looked at it as a giant solution. It will be maybe just a bigger Band-Aid. We'll call it a bandage on the gaping wound that is college football's future of exactly how things are going to go. And there's a little bit of a different turn at one SEC school of how things may go. Billy Lucci reporting on Friday after we went off the air that Texas A&M is going to announce an agreement in the multimedia rights space with a 15-year, $515 million fully guaranteed deal with Playfly Sports. Playfly Sports.
Not SoFly.
No, that doesn't mean they're going to play in SoFi Stadium.
Okay.
So if you looked at just medium rights deals for A&M, that would mean that they would jump from $18 million to $34 million annually, immediately, doubling what they are bringing home from their multimedia rights space. Now, I don't have I'm going to try to get Billy on this week. I don't have the exact ramifications of what this is, where this is going to be, how this is going to live. And this is a space that is changing because we know the entities of what's covering, who's covering, how it's being covered has been very different. But first and foremost, there are a lot of people that sort of laughed at Trev Alberts moving in to College Station. This is a massive deal that is going to be under his watch that he needs to get some credit for. Now, is part of this because of just what Texas A&M is and the relationships that they have and the amount of money around the program? Quite possibly. But at the end of the day, they've just doubled the amount of revenue that they have coming in for one portion of what can bring in said revenue that a lot of other schools don't have. So whether you're weighing them against other SEC schools or you're weighing them against other teams in college football, Texas A&M just got a massive advantage to how they're going to be able to operate. And when you look at that revenue stream across the board and how it's going to go and what it's going to be, if they're able to go above and beyond, then they're going to have the opportunity to be able to do that now. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what comes with this as far as what Play Fly Sports is going to maybe be able to do for A&M that other schools are also not going to have just from that multimedia rights space. Are we going to see more of Texas A&M? Are there more Texas A&M either documentaries or interviews or videos that are going to be pushed out in front of us that people are going to have access to that other schools are not? I don't know the exact answer to how that's going to look, but what I do know is a school that probably did not need a large chunk of cash is now going to have a bigger chunk of cash than a lot of other SEC schools do to be able to operate with. So you got to give Trev Alberts a lot of credit on this deal. You give Texas A&M credit for it. We've talked about this time and time again. These athletic directors are looking for extra ways to bring in different revenue, whether it's blowing up your press box in your stadium and making those into luxury suites, whether it's blowing up the first and second row seats in the corner of the end zone and making them lounge areas where you can go sit there and have a beverage and watch the team run out. One of the coolest things that I saw in Rupp this weekend, when you come in through the bottom, there's these glass windows where the certain people that have tickets in certain areas, they can stand there right where the team runs out. Like you see them go right into the locker room. Just an added benefit of where certain people that can buy tickets in certain places are going to get. But you're also running out of those ways. The ways of being able to generate all this extra revenue are drying up. What more can you do? We got logos on fields now. Actual fields, not practice fields. We're talking about the game. Pilot on the field, right there. You can see it. So whether it's moving your press box or finding other seats or more luxury seats, I mean, look at what Auburn's done in Plainsman Park. I mean, they blew up everything behind home plate and made it all into luxury premium seating with lounge areas back behind them. It's where it's all going. But also with that, once all that's completed, where do you get revenue next? What's next up to be able to generate more revenue into your program? That's why we have athletic directors going to social media asking for more money. That's why you got athletic directors telling you it's not enough. They're going to have to go find it. And A&M just found a massive hunk of it that they're going to be able to rake in annually for the next 15 years. Keep in mind, it's guaranteed. This is not a contract that somebody can get out of. The Aggies are getting that money no matter what. So what does this mean to the landscape just in that space for other SEC schools? Because if the true value for A&M is there, then other schools are going to be able to get it, or at least something close to it, or more than that. But we don't know exactly what the true value is going to be because, number one, I don't think we have the real details of what this looks like and what it's going to be yet. And then two, are other schools tied up to the point that they're not going to be able to make a similar move? So we'll follow it. We'll keep an eye on it, but there's got to be different ways that schools can start bringing in money, and A&M found a big one. Where could it be? More use of the stadium? Patches on jerseys in game, in practice? I mean, licensing is the way that schools are going to be able to find extra revenue. It's just how creative can they get with it? And then what are they either going to allow? What's the Board of Trustees going to allow? Or what are the people that are actually putting the uniforms going to allow? Because a lot of people are going to look at it and say, no, we're not doing that. That's ridiculous. Or we can't do that for that company. Or we can't do that in game. Or we can't do that to our uniforms. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to push back on it in a lot of different ways. But when you're talking about this kind of money, doubling your multimedia rights cash on an annual basis for 15 years, yeah, you're going with that. You're going to sign it up. I don't know, maybe a player has to do an extra interview every day. Maybe a player's got to go sit down with somebody in the media every afternoon. Who cares? You put it in their deal. It's just something that's going to have to take place, something you're going to have to do. Some of you have to move. And if you do, Gusty Goulas is who you need to call. You call the Gusty Goulas Group today, 205-542-1996. They serve more than 3,000 home buyers and sellers in the greater Birmingham area. Gusty Goulas Group recognized both nationally, locally as Greater Birmingham, Alabama's #1 team in homes sold. Over 835 5-star Google reviews. Brokered by eXp Realty, Gusty Goulas is investing thousands of dollars in the latest tools, social media photographers, and more to be able to help you get the best value for your home and know exactly what's coming up next. Think about that. Over 3,000 home buyers and sellers in Birmingham. So Gusty Goulas is going to know the inventory. He's going to know the landscape, and he's going to be able to help you before it's listed, find what you want. And he's going to get you top dollar for your home. Matter of fact, you go to GustyGoulasGroup.com on your phone, button at the top of the page. You hit that button, very little information. Find out what your home's worth right now. Let the Gusty Goulas Group start to work for you. Call 205-542-1996 today or visit GustyGoulasGroup.com and start packing. All right, so Auburn gets their first win at Rupp since 1988. Alabama goes down on Rocky Top. Other SEC games over the weekend, and not to mention, Richard Hendrix called an SEC game and was on the call for UAB Memphis yesterday where the Blazers go down in a competitive game, fun game to watch, but we'll get his take on all of those because we got a lot of college basketball that we need to get to over the next 2 hours. Excited to have the Alabama great Richard Hendrix in with us. Talk about the NCAA tournament. How many SEC teams does he expect to get in? Will the SEC dominate this NCAA tournament? We asked Paul Feinbaum that a little bit earlier in the show. If you missed that, go to jocksfm.com. Go to the app in your app store. You can check out the podcast, catch up on it there. Or just go to YouTube, search Jocks945, and you can go back to the beginning of the show, watch Paul on with us, and get his take on SEC basketball, Bruce Pearl, where they stand, why it may be problematic, why it may be overly successful moving forward. But we're going to spend a couple hours. You can be a part too. 800-239-9569. What do you want me to get into with Richard? What do you want to hear him talk about? Text in 205-834-9450. If you want to be a part of the show, tweet in at Mac and Cube. And we'll talk some college hoops coming up here for a couple of hours on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning on Jocks 94.5. As I stated, listen online, jocksfm.com. You can watch us live on YouTube every morning. Search Jocks 945. That app is in your app store. You can always tune in there. Sports Radio 740 down in Montgomery. Talk Radio 1039, 7:30 a.m. up in Huntsville, Alabama, if you're heading towards Richard's old stomping ground there in Athens, Alabama. So when we come back, what happened to Alabama? What concerns should fans have about the Crimson Tide as they near the postseason? We'll ask Richard Hendrix that in studio next on Mac and Cube in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 8 a.m. Monday, March 3rd, Jocks 94.5. Richard Hendrix joins us every Monday. It's usually at 9 o'clock. Thanks to our friends at Pizza Pulse, who you can find at Fanatics Live. And Richard, you had a chance to rip some packs over at Pizza Pulse last night. I know your eyes were opened a little bit to kind of where the whole trading card industry has gone.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I used to collect trading cards when I was a kid, so it was cool to see that. You know, it's a lot of fun to see those type of cards, and people get excited about getting in on the action to get some of those collectibles.
Well, the cool part for you was it was the Topps Chrome McDonald's All-American Series that's out now. Unfortunately, don't have your card in there. They should. You've got LeBron, Carmelo Anthony, Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, some of the old school guys in there, but had to bring back a lot of memories from you just being a part of that McDonald's All-American game.
Oh, that was a lot of fun. I mean, you're talking about the top 24 players in the country, and you get an opportunity to compete. The practices are what people don't realize is the most fun times, and the experiences, get to travel with them and do all that stuff, and you get the memories for the rest of your lifetime.
Did you think, because I think we all have an understanding of what that would be like. We've heard about the Dream Team. And that's the first thing, well, maybe not the first thing, but the most interesting part of that whole dynamic was the practices and how those guys would go out there and just literally go to war against one another. And I think oftentimes we know in that setting with those kind of egos, as they should be, guys are going to want to prove themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have an idea that it was going to be that intense going in?
No, you don't know what to expect. I mean, you go in there and everyone sees the game and the dunk contest and the three-point shootout, and that's just all fun. But it's earlier in the week when you get behind the closed doors and it's NBA scouts all around the court side, and you're watching the top 24 prospects who at that time, that was the last year that you could enter the NBA draft out of high school. Ooh. I mean, it was a competitive thing. All of the drills, the 2-on-2 drills, the 1-on-1 drills, 3-on-3, they put you in special situations, and then the testing to see what you can do athletically. I mean, everybody knows that that's their one shot to try to see if they can really move the needle as far as their draft prospects are concerned.
And that was how you guys determined starting lineups.
It was
the practices against one another.
It was. You know, and a lot of times because the game turns into a dunk fest. And
it's an all-star game.
Yeah, it's an all-star game. But, you know, I was a starter in the 2005 game. So it shows the level of competition you have to have and what you have to do to get on the court in the game.
This is something we didn't talk about last night, too. So that's wild that not only are you trying to earn that starting spot, but as you just stated, NBA scouts are sitting over there. You're playing for a draft spot. You're practicing for an all-star game for a spot in the NBA draft. Like you're trying to move into the lottery, going out there and practicing against other McDonald's All-Americans.
And it's at 18 years old. So that's the thing. You know, you're a kid and you don't realize you're a kid, but you're getting ready to play into a man's league. And you got those type of people. I mean, I'm there and you see Jerry West sitting courtside, right center court.
Yeah, that's not
intimidating at all. You see all these people, and that's the logo. And you just feel that type of pressure with every move, every jump shot that you take, every free throw that you attempt. You want to be perfect in that moment. And that's a huge moment for an 18-year-old. The game is just a breath of fresh air. You get to run up and down the court and just relax and enjoy it.
How much have things, though, changed as far as, I mean, AAU basketball we've known about for a while. We know about all the camps that you go to. You mentioned a camp with me yesterday, and we were talking that like a Michael Jordan camp that you went to. But how much more prepared are guys now, even than when you were playing, 15, 20 years ago when you were coming out, maybe getting ready for the draft or getting ready for college? Because we've talked about it in college football. When you look at Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State or Ryan Wingo or Colin Simmons at Texas or Ryan Williams at Alabama, these kids just feel more ready to move in and not just compete or not just be a part of a team, but thrive now more than ever. What's different in the basketball realm of why guys are having more success earlier?
Well, the access to the information about being a pro is more so out there than it ever was. I mean, you got to think about it. You go back to 2005, I was playing high school basketball for my dad in Athens, Alabama. You don't have any interaction and connection to people that are professionals. You don't have any high-level training tips that these guys get. You don't know a thing about nutrition and strength and conditioning. You're just throwing as much weight on the bar as you can and try to do a bench press and hoping it works out. You're playing pickup ball every single day with your friends. So you get a chance to go out there and you have this creativity of your individual game that you developed. But now everybody has these trainers that they've been going to from a young age. They've been going to these talent camps from a young age. Yeah. And all of that kind of stuff is trying to prepare them to be a pro. And they have that at a situation that's a young age. What I do think is lost is that competitive nature that I think that we had. that you don't know a guy. You're showing up to the McDonald's All-American game, the first time you're ever meeting a guy who's in the top 24, and you don't know him. There's no friendship. I'm trying to destroy that man in front of you. And what you see now, it's a lot of friendly competition. People don't want to compete. They rather work out with the skill trainer instead of get man-to-man and go at it with someone watching. It's almost like a lot of people are afraid to get shown up, whereas in the past, you were looking forward to that opportunity to show what you can do.
Well, and that too, I think, is something that we've talked about in football mainly that's a little bit different now, is a lot of it the product of the transfer portal. But, these guys that are, they're dapping each other up and hugging before the game, and they're all friends after the game, or their guy transfers off their team, and they're like, go get your bag, man. Good luck. Best of it. And it's just that, I think that falls in the category of what you're referencing as it used to be. No, we're going to, Jordan made it famous in the documentary of taking anything humanly possible to turn personal against somebody that would drive him to want to beat you that much more badly. And there seems like there's a little bit of a lack of that now.
See, and you touched on something. I come out and graduate in high school in 2005. Michael Jordan is just finishing in 2003. Those memories that you have as a kid at that era, watching him compete with the Bulls, winning those championships, denying all of these other greats an opportunity to win an NBA championship. That type of competitiveness and that model was what you strive to be as an athlete. The generation now is used to seeing the best athletes join together and be on teams, being friendly, not competing in all-star games, not taking things personal, not getting chippy in the playoffs when it's on the line. So it's a different type of, situation in which they've been raised around athletics. And I do think that edge is something that makes it better. That pride that you have in the jersey that you have and not wanting to put on the other team's jersey because that's your opponent that you've lost today. I mean, you see the handshakes before the game and after the game. Those two guys nowadays might very well be teammates on the next year. I mean,
look at, I think you were on the call for Oklahoma and Kentucky the other night.
Yes, I was.
And
Otega Oweh.
That one got a little heated after the game.
It did. Hey, and I love to see it.
Yes.
I was the guy on the call with it. I love to see it. It was a bunch of jawing back and forth. This was a big game. Two teams that needed to win. Kentucky trying to reestablish themselves in the SEC. Oklahoma was trying to get in the NCAA tournament field. Game comes down to the wire, and it gets a little chippy, but it had been chippy all game long. But that's what it is. You compete. You have the emotions, flare up. You get over it, and you come back out on the next time when you jump the ball and you play again.
100%. Richard Hendrix joining us in studio, one of the all-time greats at Alabama. We're going to spend a lot of time talking college hoops today, Richard, but let's start in just on this Alabama-Tennessee game. I love the fact, number one, that Nate Oates took the blame after the game. And we see so many coaches that just either refuse to do that, don't want to do that, try and make excuses for it. He just said straight up in multiple ways, hey, I'll take it. This is on me. We'll move forward. I could have done multiple things in a different way, and I'm sorry that I didn't. He said he let the team down. I respect that. I appreciate that. But how do some of the things that happened to this team late actually take place? I mean, a 5-second violation seems incomprehensible. I don't know mentally, emotionally what the procedure there is, like what you're telling yourself to do or go through, or how you mentally count it, or if there's somebody on the bench that begins to say something or wave that the ball's got to come out, or you call that timeout. But just tell our listeners, how do you think that even happens?
Well, the first thing is a tough environment to play in. You got to play for the entire 40 minutes. You get a chance, you get up by 4 points, you get one defensive stop, you get the foul, they get an and one. But it starts with the defensive block out. You can't allow a man to be able to get in there, get an offensive rebound, and then go to the free throw line and hit the 2 free throws.
Right.
You get the baseline out of bounds opportunity, been struggling to get it in. The main thing that you want at the end of the game, if you're facing pressure, you want 5 people on the court that want the basketball in their hands. You got to be physical. You got to create separation. You got to meet the pass, and you got to want it. If you're timid, then, it's going to show. Because when the game gets down to the end, referees are not going to call some foul before the ball is even inbounded on a grab or whatnot to decide the game on the free throw line or something. And you shouldn't do that. So you just have to understand the attitude has to be that I want the ball. You have to be a little bit more detailed on your screens to get your teammate open because it's just a pressure-packed situation. Alabama down the stretch just was not able to make any of the plays that they needed to make, and Tennessee was able to steal the game.
Yeah, it's we talk about Tennessee being different defensively, and I don't know how many other teams would fall into that category. other than Houston that just defends you in such a different way. For us that don't watch basketball the way that you do, help us explain why Tennessee is so different on that side of the ball.
First off, it's a mentality. It's like I would make the correlation to football. Like if you got a head coach who was a former defensive coordinator, you're going to be more of a defensive-minded team. Everything that you do is going to be focused on getting stops when you need it. It's the same thing if you have an offensive-minded coach. It's going to be about trying to outscore someone.
Right.
And Rick Barnes and the way that he does things, as well as Kelvin Sampson, you know that they work their practices in a way to get stops. That's the DNA of how they believe in playing basketball. And it's effective because when you travel, defense is able to travel. You don't have to worry about knocking down shots. You can strangle out games. And as a complementary style, they can slow down the offensive pace of it. So it helps out the defense. So it starts with the mentality that's what you're going to lead on. And then when you get late in the game, that's just who you are. You know how to get a stop when you need one. You get physical. And what happens when you play with that level of intensity and physicality, referees are not going to foul the whole team out. It's a saying a lot of times in basketball I've heard, if you foul 20 times, the ref are going to call 20 fouls. If you foul 40 times, the refs are going to call 20 fouls. So it's beneficial to you in a lot of times to play to the edge of the foul and see what's going to happen. If you get one foul call, your coach is going to get on the officials. The crowd's going to get into it. They're not going to keep fouling you out in the first half of the game. And now you've set the tone for what it's going to be like late, and then you're able to get it done.
I want to talk to you about fouls because there have been some people that have said that Janai Broome recently has been complaining a little bit more, and some of that might be frustration on his part of how he's being officiated or guys who are defending him as officiating. I just kind of view that as a part of basketball. I mean, I feel like especially guys in the paint, I think a lot of times when they get down there and you start banging in the post a little bit, either the guy makes a shot and he wants the and one or he misses it, and there's a little bit of, hey, what's happening there? Why are you not calling that? I don't know what your mentality was or your approach was, but do you think guys can affect how the game is called? Guys who are playing, guys who are in the game. Like if you're calling the game and I feel like the defender on me is roughing me up a little bit too much and I should be getting more calls, if I'm going to you on that after possessions, hey man, he's dropping that elbow in me, or hey, he's hooking the arm a little bit more. Like, why are you not calling that? Do you believe that impacts how games are called?
You can definitely sell some things to the official, but at the same point, if you're a person that's constantly complaining and constantly looking at the referee and showing him up and having mannerisms that makes him look as if he's missing calls, then you're not going to get the benefit of the call when it comes to the whistle. Oftentimes, really good players are constantly going to do some flops. They're going to complain, but the guys who just kind of keep playing through it, if you just keep playing and being tough through it, then the moments when you do have that communication with the referee, you might be able to get one. But if you're constantly showing them up, the referee's not going to be on your side. Because at the same time, really good players who understand how to draw fouls, they really initiate the contact. If you look at a guy like Janai Broome, he's one of the best of them. He can draw fouls. Mark Sears is where on the Alabama side, but they're initiating the contact and able to get that call. But it's tough when you come down the stretch after you've been so physical all night long to get one that's, a little bit ticky-tack to go in your way at the end of the game.
Yeah, you're complaining every possession. Eventually the ref's going to start blocking you out, right? And so he's not even hearing what you're saying. The third, fourth, eighth, 10th possession of the game, he's kind of like, all right, Richard's going to complain every time. Like, let's move on to the next guy. We're not worried about him anymore.
Oh, he knows it before the game. I mean, they've called 40, 50 of your games. They know who they have to deal with, So, I mean, some people think that they can be charming with it. I don't think that it will. The thing that I found out over my career playing is that, a referee is never going to change a call. Well, I guess now you can review because they do it like 10 times a game. You get a chance.
I feel like that Auburn-Kentucky game could have been about an hour shorter without reviews.
It's something they need to take out of the game and really they need to review that. But I say they're not going to change it. So it's a waste of your energy. I would say if I was giving advice to a young player, just play the game.
Right.
Trying to, debate or do whatever you got to do to get fouls, it's a waste of your energy. You'd be better off focusing on your opponent and just letting the game come to you.
Is it something that because it's been allowed at a younger age, guys are just used to doing it now? Or maybe not that they're used to do it, but it's a little bit more accepted at a younger age to not shut it down early. And so now guys are just doing it into college, into high school, into the NBA because it feels widespread. And not that it's never happened, but like I remember in my day, I can vividly remember guys like Jordan or Magic or Isaiah Thomas. You would always see them during free throws. Like one guy would go over and like off to the side, he was kind of hunched over, like hands on his knees, talking to an official. I didn't think about it then, but I think about it now. And they're probably trying to set the tone or set the table for, hey man, we give it down to Parrish. Like Lambier's found him every time. Like you got to give us some of those. Like you got to help us a little bit here instead of the like all in somebody's face where everybody can see what's happening.
See, but notice what you said. They're waiting to the down period. They got their hands on their knees. They're communicating in a respectful manner. When you are demonstrative, putting your hands up, looking out the side of your eye, showing them up in any type of way, that's when you're not going to get the benefit of the whistle. And oftentimes, I've seen in my career, it's just a waste of your energy.
Right.
I mean, you're focused on the wrong things. It throws you off on your focus that you need to score the ball or defend. And, it gets you off of your game. Unless you are a guy who your job is just to be the agitator and the defender on the court, and they don't need your point production and all of your statistical output, then it might help you to be that way because it can get you going. But if you're the main guy, you're better off just kind of doing it discreetly, communicating when you can, and kind of keeping it respectful. You'll probably get the benefit of the whistle when you need it.
Okay. The agitator. That's what we need to talk to Richard Hendrix about. Is it a benefit? Could it be a benefit? Could it be a big problem? I think a lot of people know where I'm going, but I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had. We'll do it on the other side. First, I'll tell you that there's still some cold weather hanging around. You felt it this morning. Schedule your system checkup now from a Trane Comfort Specialist. Trane has been recognized 10 consecutive years as America's most trusted HVAC brand and our exclusive home comfort partners here at Jocks. Visit Trane.com to find a comfort specialist near you. I feel like I could have transitioned right from maybe talking about Arkansas shooting into cold weather as a team that couldn't find anything to go down, as I believe they were 0 at the half from behind the three-point line, but I missed that opportunity to do that there. We'll talk agitators in basketball next with Richard Hendrix on Jocks 94.5. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, 8:20, Monday, March 3rd on Jocks 94.5. Richard Hendrix in studio with us for the next hour and a half. And we talked a little bit about agitation, guys agitating, guys being frustrated. And I really appreciate Richard Hendrix's sort of view on this. We have talked to you about Chad Baker-Mazara before, and we've talked to other people about it. We've talked to Bruce Pearl about it here on the show. Very few people have taken the tone that you did the last time it was a discussion point when you're on with us. And Richard joins us every week thanks to Pizza Pulls on Fanatics Live. All you got to do is go to fanaticslive.com, get the app, go find Pizza Pulls, and you're going to get into card breaks like Topps Chrome Football, the Topps Chrome McDonald's All-American set that we were opening last night. Pizza Pulls, appreciate them being the sponsor of Richard Hendrix on the show each and every week, which, by the way, is totally different than what you thought it was originally going in. You got no pizza last night, and you were disappointed about that.
I was. I mean, you go somewhere and it's called, Pizza Pulls to do something. I'm expecting to pull a slice of pizza. I mean, goodness, can I get a little bite to eat?
But Chad Baker-Mazara for you is something that almost every championship team has had. Almost every championship team needs. And it can be a welcome distraction for you. It can be a welcome distraction to the other team. What can he be? And then maybe what does he need to not be for Auburn in the postseason?
Well, at this point, in his maturity of his career, he's got to be who he is. And what you have to do is you just have to understand when you toe in the line that you don't want to cross it and cost your team. I mean, everyone knows that's exactly what he did last year in the NCAA tournament. And it was something that you could not overcome. At the end of the day, it's not just about what he's doing with his antics. He's a really good player. He has experience. He can shoot. He has great positional size and length. He's been known to make timely buckets when they need him most. So you need his production as far as what he's able to do from a skill standpoint. But at the same time, you got to have on your team a guy on your team that gets under the skin of their opponent. He's been able to do that. He's very demonstrative with his actions. He can make people play his type of game to throw you off. And that's something that's part of it. In all great teams, you always have a guy on a team who's like that. And he's just the one for this Auburn team.
I don't think fans sometimes realize the importance of a distraction and what it can do to other teams mentally. And listen, I could tell you stories now. I was friends with Marcus Stroud, who played defensive tackle at Georgia. He played next to Richard Seymour. Richard Seymour is a Hall of Famer. He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I knew after playing for him against year one that he didn't like people going low on him. And he didn't like talking about going low on him. And I can vividly remember the second year that we played them. And I knew that Marcus and he kind of they were competing to be the first defensive tackle off the board. And Marcus would kind of laugh when you started getting under Richard's skin. So I would never talk to Richard Seymour, but after plays, I would tell Marcus how we were about to go low on Richard so Richard could hear it. And Marcus would laugh. Well, that only got him that much more pissed off that I was talking to his teammate about what we were about to do to him. And his teammate was laughing at it. So you start to figure those things out. Well, then what's Richard Seymour focusing on?
Yeah, he's focusing on worrying about what you said
not getting cut
at the game. That's all he's worried about.
And not getting embarrassed and not being better than the guy next to him. Instead of, we have to read our keys on this play, or this is what our responsibility on this play. I just think that a lot of times we discount, I don't want to say how easy it is to happen, but once you figure it out, how easy that is to do to other teams.
And see, it's what you touched on. It's like he also doesn't know what you're going to do as far as your scheme. He thinks one thing is coming.
Right.
And maybe, depending on the situation, with most instigators, the person that they started with is probably more valuable to their team than you are as far as the production in the major aspects of the game.
He was a hell of a lot more valuable to his team than I was to mine.
See, but you throw him off his game.
Yeah.
I mean, you throw him off his game. He's worried about the wrong person and the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And he should be worried about the scheme and what he needs to do in the game. I mean, so you have to have a guy like that. And also, many times those type of players may not be the main focal point on their team, but that it's something for them. That's how they get involved in the game. That's how they become a part of the storyline. They don't have the skills to definitely give you the point production. You're not going to talk about what they did in the stat sheet, but you can talk about how they impacted the game in so many other ways. And that scrappy, fighting type spirit is what a lot of people like, and it helps teams.
Well, then, too, they offer up, they take a load of that burden off of other players. Like, Steph and Klay Thompson didn't have to be physical because Draymond was going to handle all that.
Right.
You know, Jordan and Pippen didn't have to go spend all their energy rebounding because Rodman was going to do that.
Right.
You know, you had like Isaiah Thomas. Well, he still would swing at people, but like Lane Beer was going to do a lot of that dirty work. So it's removing a little bit of responsibility, and maybe sometimes it's getting in the way of the distractions of the other guys.
It does.
Like I'll step in and don't let you get distracted because I'll take it all on me. And if that means that I shoot 0 for 8, I was going to probably do that anyway. So it doesn't really matter at that point.
Absolutely. That's exactly how it works. And because your points and things might not be needed, but we need the other guy's points, who's the main guy on the team.
If you can remove a little bit of that, we're good.
Right. And that's exactly how it works.
What about the actual benefits of Baker Mazara's game? Where does he maybe thrive, or maybe where's his skill set show up? And because now the focus is not really on a lot of that with him. I mean, you mentioned he's a really good basketball player. He does a lot of things well. I know his length is very different with how he defends and where he defends and what he does. I think for me, and again, I don't know basketball even 1/100th of what you do, but when I watch him operate, the thing that amazes me about him more than anything else is how quick his hands are and the ability to get the ball out. Like there are times that he finds a way to poke the ball out. There was one against Alabama at half court on an inbounds play, and all of a sudden he's just sitting there and pop, all of a sudden that ball's out and he gets it and it's a fast break the other direction. Like that's where I feel like he's different than a lot of guys. What are the positives in his game that stick out to you that maybe don't get the attention they deserve because of all the other stuff?
Well, the reality is he's a really good player. I mean, this guy's averaging 13 points a game. He's a really good defender. He's 6'7", so he's versatile. He can come down and contest shots and help side. He can switch on multiple positions. He's almost a 90% free throw shooter, so you can count on him in the clutch. I mean, this is not a situation where the only reason he's on the court is because he's a defender and a disruptor to what the teams do. He is a big-time player. He's been playing good basketball. He's experienced with his age and the time he's had on the court with this unit. So all of that comes into accountability. But it's just something for him that a lot of times for players who do like to talk within the game, that do like to communicate with the other teams, bench and whatnot, that gets them going. You have to have sometime a motivation within yourself. You touched on Michael Jordan earlier, how he might use anything as motivation. Someone he heard in a newspaper said something about him. He remembers something in years ago that someone said that he couldn't do something, and he uses that as personal motivation.
Right.
A lot of times really good players like that who are doing things in the game, they need to poke you, so you poke them back, so then they can turn it up.
There's no doubt. Richard Hendrix, former Alabama great, joining us in studio. He's brought to us each and every week by Fanatics Live and Pizza Pulls. If you're looking to get back into the hobby, looking for some card breaks, whether it's basketball cards, football cards, baseball cards, go to fanaticslive.com or on the app and find Pizza Pulls. We'll tweet out the link that you can use and get $25 free on that, thanks to our friends at Pizza Pulls. I want to talk to you about a little bit more with this Auburn team, but we've talked about it for a while now. I want to switch over to Alabama. And has your opinion changed on them with some things you've seen here down the stretch? What maybe needs to right itself for this team to make a legitimate postseason run? We'll do that when we come back. Talk Nate Oates' team right after this on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Monday, March 3rd, 8:32 a.m. right here on Jocks 94.5. Richard Hendrix, ESPN college basketball analyst, joining us in studio, which, by the way, I think one of the best basketball analysts out there. And I've told you this before. Like, the more you keep doing it, the more you're going to rise. You had a chance to call UAB Memphis yesterday. We haven't really hit on this game just yet. Probably the best name in basketball, by the way, Dane Danger. Watch yourself. 16 and 17 yesterday. He was great for Memphis as they come to Bartow and get that win, 88-81. UAB now third place behind Memphis and North Texas. They go to 19 and 10 on the season. Memphis 24 and 5. UAB just 7 of 20 from behind the three-point line. Lindenborg, not the Lindenborg that we see about every night. Not that he was bad. 10.6 rebounds last night. Why was Memphis able to get this win against UAB for those that didn't see it yesterday?
And they turned up the defensive intensity, but you touch on the big man, Dane Danger. He was a man down low. He took on the matchup, and it was fun to see. You talk about Chippy, him and Lindenborg had going on. They were going at it. But it was the foul trouble that they were able to get Yaxel Lindenberg in the game. Wasn't able to start the second half and be as impactful, slowed down the flow. But UAB had a great effort the entire game, but the last 3 minutes of game, they were just not able to get any shots going. The defensive intensity for Memphis really took it up another notch. Penny Hardaway did a great job. I mean, a well-played game. Two teams that you say you hate to have a winner or a loser in that one. But that was a big-time matchup competing for first place.
AK is a great coach. He's proven that, and not just here at UAB, but he has proven it here at UAB with what he's done. I mean, you could have said early in his career, like, oh, okay, well, he goes and gets a great player or two that maybe some other folks didn't want, but he's had to replace multiple great players in his system now, and he's been able to do that and had this team contending. Has Penny Hardaway proven that he's a great college basketball coach? Because if you remember, Richard, this was, he's just getting his AAU guys in here, and he had a couple lottery picks that we knew were in the pipeline. He's kind of past that now.
Oh, yeah. He's improved as a coach. I think he should get his respect for his development of what he's done as a head coach. He didn't know what he was getting into. And obviously, when you
How could you in today's college basketball if you haven't done it?
You can. And when you're a guy like Penny Hardaway, who's an icon in the sport, he had a difficult task. This is a game that obviously guys have been working for a long amount of time to climb up and finally get a head coaching position. When you get one of that caliber at that school without having the experience, a lot of people don't like to see that. So when you're playing against him and his team, you'll see a lot of people that are not just playing against the five on the court, but they're playing against him. You want to get a signature win against Penny Hardaway. You want to beat the guy who was the guy that could have been a Hall of Famer, a potential Hall of Famer, an all-star, all-world icon in the game. At one time, I believe, when Michael was out of the game for 18 months, he was the best player in the world.
Penny was unreal now.
I mean, this is just the reality because everyone's competitive. But he's been able to make the adjustments over the course of his career. He's realized he can't be as much of a player's coach. He has to be more disciplined and detailed with little things off of the court and on the court. And it showed up yesterday in the final 2 minutes of that ball game against a well-coached Andy Kennedy team. I mean, listen, you talked about Andy Kennedy. This is a guy, when I was in college, he came to Ole Miss, and this is before the transfer portal. So you can't bring your guys in and just flip the whole roster, like everyone else does. I mean, so there's this notion that you have to be able to adjust. And he's been able to do that his entire career. First year at Ole Miss, he comes in and they win the West. I mean, people don't realize that. We came down to the last day in SEC play.
We kind of don't even realize there was an East and a West anymore.
Yeah.
That feels like forever ago.
It was a three-way tie between Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. And Ole Miss won their last game. And Andy Kennedy took Ole Miss to a West Division championship in his first year. I mean, they win the SEC tournament while he was at Ole Miss. I mean, the guy has done an outstanding job, obviously winning in an American Conference, winning the tournament championship, and almost winning the NIT a couple years ago. So, I mean, he's been a phenomenal coach for a long time and been able to do it in so many different ways. Transfer portal, NIL era, coming in and inheriting players who had not won. I mean, so that type of adaptability is huge.
And not able to go out and do it just because of where his NIL is. I mean, there are certain programs. We could look at what Kelvin Sampson's done at Houston. He had a massive head start on a lot of teams with what they had in the NIL tank. Now, Kelvin Sampson's an amazing coach. I mean, you and I talked about it yesterday. Maybe top 3 coach in college basketball right now.
Yeah.
But AK's had to do it against some circumstances that a lot of guys don't see. Even Memphis, you could say, is way ahead of the game in NIL. I mean, this is a program that had an individual, one, who said, if you bring us to the Big 12, you can keep your media money. Just cancel it out. We don't need it for however long. I mean, so you're working with some different circumstances there. But I don't think people give Penny the respect he deserves as a coach. Because even I just kind of said to myself, who's the big man that got drafted the first year that he had him? He didn't play a whole ton, like the 7-footer that he had right out of the gate. He's in the NBA now. And he brings him in and just thinking, okay, well, he's got 2, 3 more of those guys the next couple of years. He'll kind of live on those. But
James Wiseman,
that was it. Yeah, you figure, okay, he's got a couple of those in the tank. He's going to keep bringing them in, and then he'll just kind of make a living on that. But he's gone well past that and deserves his credit as a college coach. So say we're going to talk about Alabama. This game against Tennessee, does this change your opinion on this team moving forward? Does it change your opinion of what they're capable of in the postseason?
It doesn't change my opinion of what they're capable of in the postseason. Listen, this is a strong Alabama team. Talent for talent. If you look at them, the other teams in the SEC and what I've seen around the country, they're just as good as the best. And depending on the draws and the matchup that they'll have in the SEC tournament and the NCAA tournament, Alabama can win the national championship. There's no question about it. Now, there's just been a handful of teams out there that they have seemed to struggle with that have the same level of size, athleticism, and they have a tougher physical style that allows them to slow down the game and make it difficult on Alabama to score. But when Alabama's clicking offensively, hitting shots from the outside, getting into the paint and obviously scoring layups, and they can play from in front, and they force teams to play their style, they're tough to beat. And defensively, they're improving. They have the positional size to lock people down, and if they can stay connected for 40 minutes, then it's tough for them to beat. The challenge for them to do that is when you play a fast up-tempo style and there's so many possessions in the game, that's a lot of time that you have to continue to refocus on every single play and play tough defense. It gives the other team an opportunity to get back in it. And then with the depth of this team, you have to find the unit that you can lean on in the clutch.
All right. You brought up something that I haven't really thought about with this team, and that is a lot of possessions. I think we see this with college football teams. I have to kind of reference everything. I do this in our Sunday school class that my wife leads a lot. It's like everything has to be a football analogy.
It's great. Football is always great to bring it. You can always understand. When you make a correlation to football, it's the perfect thing. I mean, first off, sports is the perfect thing to always make a correlation to life. But football, you can somehow always get people to understand, especially here in the South. People understand football far better than they understand basketball.
So the teams that go fast in football, you can watch them a lot of times, and it feels like there is, and I don't think this is intentional, but it would appear as though times there's less value on certain possessions. Like, why would you come out and throw the ball 3 times? Or why would you come out and run that play? Like, How is this guy not getting the ball? Well, when you know you're going to get it 18, 19 times in a game, I'm not saying it's okay to throw one of those away, but you can set things up in a different way. You don't have to be as diabolical in every snap and every possession because in the back of your mind, we have 11 more tries at that. Is that something that's maybe happening with this Alabama team? Is they know they're going to have 3 times the possessions of a lot of other teams. So if they come down and launch a double NBA 3, it's okay. Like, it's fine. You've talked about in basketball, different from football, and I love this analogy of we can go miss on 3 straight possessions. But I'm going to get 10 more possessions in this game, so it doesn't matter. I can make up for it. Then all of a sudden, I had the best game anybody's ever seen, and they forgot that I missed 3 shots in a row.
Yeah, the games are so different as far as what you're forgiven about. In football, you turn the ball over, they get a pick 6, they get a scoop and score. That can change the whole game.
You can win the game. We're still talking about, but he threw that interception first possession. Like, we can't have that moving forward.
Right. I mean, you can't have it. I mean, you make a mistake, you miss a field goal. I mean, it's magnified on the things that you have to have. In basketball, it's not so much. You turn one over and they get a layup on the other end, you get the ball right back. And if you go down by a couple of possessions, you can just close the lead in a matter of 40 seconds really quickly. You can turn some defense and offense. So the game, the nature of the game, doesn't force you to be as disciplined on every single possession as you do in football. And with that being said, it's like when you have teams that can score, they know that they can lean on the fact that the run is coming. And that's how Alabama is. You can watch the game. They'll be losing in the game. But you know as a fan, if you're watching, and even the players know, that 9-0 run is coming. That 8-0 run is coming. But the strong teams defensively, they're able to make sure that you don't go on that 8-0 run. You don't go on the 7-0 run that happens in 30 seconds and gets the crowd in the building. And that's the problem, that as the late in the shot clock you get, can you make them force them to play high-level offense and beat you methodically?
Do you know when you're in the middle of one of those? Because we see on TV all the time, it'll say Alabama on a 10-2 run or Auburn on an 11-0 run. Like, do you feel that as a basketball player?
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely, you can feel it. I mean, it was a recent game. It might have been a Kentucky game. I think Mark Sears, they stole the ball. He comes down, he throws an alley-oop. He doesn't get it, but he comes down, he shoots a transition three-pointer. That's the nail. You can feel the energy in the building that it's like, if we hit the next shot, the roof is about to blow off.
Right.
You can feel it. So you shoot it, and if you make it, you know it's going to be the ball game. And you also know defensively as a team, it's like, when the backbreaker happens, that you know that you cannot get it back from this point, and you're just only hoping for a prayer to get back in the game.
Yeah, it's Deflategate. All of a sudden, you give up one of those shots, threes, whatever that is, and then it's, okay, now we've given up 6 in a row. Like, we have to find an answer. Then you press, I'm assuming, on offense to find that answer and try to counter what the teams are doing, being on an 8-0 run or a 12-0 run. And that obviously is going to work against you a lot of times as well. We'll continue talking Alabama basketball with Richard Hendrix. Who outside of Mark Sears is most important this postseason for Alabama? Richard will answer that question when we come back next on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning, Monday, March 3rd, 8:48 a.m. Richard Hendrix live in studio, former Alabama great, now ESPN college basketball analyst, was on the call for multiple games over the weekend. You had a busy weekend.
Yeah. I like it.
Calling a game in Mississippi and then having to head down, call this game in Birmingham yesterday. Like that's, you're hitting the road.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, listen, you're just watching ball. So, I mean, it's where I want to be, in the gym.
The best part, something that you and I have had a conversation about, like to kind of peel back the curtain for people. Yesterday, we were kind of talking about meetings and coaches' meetings, and you just kind of laughed and you were like, man, basketball's totally different. Like, we barely talk to these guys for the game. Like, we get a little bit about the lineup and who might go and who might not go, but we're not sitting there talking about all this, scheme and X's and O's and back and forth. And I thought it was cool to kind of hear the differences in how we meet with the team and talk about a team. But you also references, like, the buildup is so much different. It's a full week going into this one game, whereas basketball, you're playing Tuesday, Wednesday. Now we're playing Saturday. It's like there's not near as much that goes into an individual game because there's not enough time for that.
Yeah, when I hear about what you guys do on the football side when it comes to preparation for games, it's like a whole week thing. You're traveling in a couple of days before the game. You're sitting down in a conference room talking to the coaches, and they're explaining everything. And that's why when I watch football game, you'll have so much material. But in the basketball, I wish that a lot of coaches understood that, hey, we're not here to hurt you. The media is here trying to help promote the game. We're trying to promote you and your players. And if you can help us out to help you, it would be most appreciated. And more so than anything, I've found now, after being a professional athlete and being on the side and looking at it from a different perspective, the media members are professionals. They work hard at their crafts. They help raise the interest of the game, and they are a part of it. And I think a lot of coaches need to understand that they're there in a positive way. They're not some, leech that's trying to sit there and take a moment of your time and wants to be around you. They're really trying to do their job as a professional, and I think most coaches need to respect that and give them the time that they deserve so they can do their job to promote you and the game. For me, also, as a former player, I always look at it a little bit differently because I look at it as, I would hope that you would give some respect to someone who's been out there on the court.
Yeah.
Because coaches have to have good players to be good. Like, you have to have good players.
No doubt.
So I don't care how good of a coach that you think you are. If you don't have a good player, you're not winning anything. So for me, I look at it as, you're doing a great job. And that's cool. You might have developed a little bit of fame in the profession, and that's cool. I respect the profession. But this is a game that you have to have good players to play. And if you don't have them, then you're not going to ever be any good in your job. So respect everybody in the whole ecosystem of this thing about how we're trying to promote what's going on. And you'll get a much better product, because when you retire and you're done playing like us players now, you're hoping someone comes and talks to you.
Absolutely.
You're hoping someone asks you for an autograph or a picture. And you run into some of these coaches out there in the game, and it's just like they don't have any time for you in this. And it's like, hey, we're just trying to promote you and your team, man. I don't get it.
And there are a lot of coaches that actually understand it and get it and want to talk to you because of it and are appreciative of how you relay some of those messages and discuss their teams. I want to go back to that first game you called this weekend, Oklahoma at Ole Miss. Ole Miss gets that win 87-84. These are two very odd teams for different reasons. Ole Miss has been great against unranked teams this year. Oklahoma was great out of conference this year. Ole Miss has not been good against great teams. Oklahoma has not been good against SEC teams.
Right.
Both these teams have a good chance to get into the tournament. What should we make of each of these two teams heading into the postseason?
Well, I mean, obviously, conference records obviously should count. Yeah, obviously, and Ole Miss has been doing a much better job as far as that's concerned than Oklahoma has. But Oklahoma has some signature wins in that non-conference and starting 13-0. It's helping them as the season goes forward. I believe they beat Michigan, they beat Providence, and those teams have been starting to play good basketball as of late. So it helps to grow your resume. Within that,
beat Arizona, beat Oklahoma State.
There you go. I mean, so within that, what also takes place is that you are rewarded for playing good teams. And when you're in the SEC and every single game is a ranked opponent, even if you lose the game, it counts more than if you win a game against a lesser opponent in the eyes of the net rankings and what the NCAA is going to use as far as evaluating. So it's a sticky it's a difficult thing to try to navigate, because if you take Oklahoma, you have to ask yourself, because they played tough opponents, and even though they lost close games, are they better than the team in another conference that didn't play anyone? And that's the question that you have to ask, and the difficult job for the committee to have to make that decision about who's deserving of a slot.
Because it's interesting the way you stated it and you followed it up, and I was going to have to ask you about it anyway. It's you're rewarded for playing good teams, not beating good teams. Is that the way it should be?
Well, I think you should challenge yourself. I think that the unfortunate part about it is for teams that are in a one-bid league or a lesser league that doesn't have as many automatic bids. That's the challenge that they don't have. They can't control that.
Right.
And that's the frustrating thing. You talk about I had the Memphis and UAB game. Memphis is going to be playing for seeding, but everyone else in the American Conference is going to hope to win the AAC tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. So what that does to Memphis, who is a really good team, is it doesn't make people respect their wins, and they can't control the league that they're in. And it's another team who was also 2-2 against the SEC, beat some of those teams that we're talking about that are on the bubble. And they've also done a good job with other games in the non-conference, beat UConn early on in the season. So you should be respected as such. But that's the frustrating thing, is that the teams that are in conferences that don't have those high-level automatic bids or those situations like that, they don't get the opportunity to improve their resume, and guys are rewarded for being in a tougher league, even if they don't win.
Which of those two teams would you say more dangerous come tournament time, and for what reason, Oklahoma or Ole Miss?
I would say, if they get in, because Oklahoma's solidly on the bubble, I would probably have to say Oklahoma. I think that Ole Miss, they have a talented team. They have a veteran team. They have like 11 seniors on that. But sometimes they get in a situation where they don't seem to start to flow offensively. They're trying to pick and choose who the guy to go to is. They got 11 seniors, and I believe they have like 9 guys on that roster who are 1,000-point scorers because they come in from other schools in the transfer portal. But Oklahoma, with Jeremiah Fears, Jalen Moore, who's a Birmingham kid, went to Gardendale High School. He has the ability to take games over, both of those two guys. They have a knockdown shooter in Bryson Goodine. And in the game, when teams start to get the offensive flow in the NCAA tournament, that pressure gets on other teams to get stops.
Yep.
And I think you want to lean to a team that can get hot if you're just talking about one game.
Bracketology per Joe Lunardi as it stands this morning. Auburn, the number 1 overall seed. Tennessee would be on the 1 line. Duke and Houston, your 1 seeds. Alabama, Florida, 2 seeds. Texas Tech, Wisconsin, St. John's, Michigan, your 3 seeds, which means A&M and Kentucky would go to the 4 line. Also, Arkansas and Oklahoma, as well as Georgia, Richard, part of the last 4 in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. Texas, the last team in, too. I think they said to Georgia. You said Georgia's last team in?
Texas, one of the first 4 out.
Oh, wow. It flipped. Man.
So the SEC, according to this bracketology, and we know what the last couple games are going to be for these teams. There's a couple massive games down the stretch. The SEC, 13 bids per Joe Lunardi in his latest bracketology. So we'll discuss the NCAA tournament just a little bit more. I mentioned to you that I would ask Richard, outside of Mark Sears, who's the most important player for Alabama in March? We'll come back to that, and I will ask him that question. He'll give you his answer when we return right here on Jocks 94.5. 9 o'clock, hour number 3, McElroy and Cubelic on Jocks 94.5, Monday, March 3rd. You want to be a part of the show, you get in, you have something for Richard you want to ask, 800-239-9569, Bama Hoops, Auburn Hoops, SEC Hoops, the NCAA Tournament. Text in 205-834-9450. Might have to bring back Bad Box Score of the Day today just for Richard since he's in. See if he enjoys that segment or thinks that we should keep it in the trash where it has been for over a week now. Some of you texted me over the weekend that it needs to be back, so we may give it another run at the end of the hour today. You and I were talking about the NCAA tournament before we went to break, and I asked the question out loud, but I haven't necessarily asked it to you just yet. Outside of Mark Sears, Richard, who is the most important player for Alabama the rest of March?
Well, I think it's simple. It's Grant Nelson. I mean, he has the ability with his skill set to be so versatile. I mean, he's been banged up a little bit, may not have some of the biggest performances that he needs as of late, 7 points. But he did have 12 rebounds in his last outing against Tennessee. But the point production in his last 5 games has been below his average. And he's going to have to get his game back going, get healthy, and play strong. And that NCAA tournament last year, that North Carolina game, that was the Grant Nelson game as far as I'm concerned. And when you see him play at that elite level, when he can block shots, he's hitting shots from the outside. He's taking advantage of mismatches when he has a size advantage, and he gets fouled and knocking down the free throws. Alabama is tough to beat. It's a bonus when he hits a couple of threes in every single game, because now you really have to respect that offense, and the driving lanes become more available for Mark Sears to go all the way to the basket.
Have his minutes been – I feel like his minutes have diminished recently. Do you feel like there's a reason for that, or is it because somebody else has stepped up doing different things? Is it just Nate maybe trying to tinker with different minutes for the postseason? But I don't feel like he has been playing as much as he was earlier in the year.
Well, listen, like I would tell anyone, when you watch basketball, a lot of people who watch it take too much stock in the starting five and all of those things of that nature. But the first thing that I said this season, the biggest challenge that Nate Oates would have was, how do you manage the depth of this roster? And it's starting to show because you have really good players. But Grant Nelson and his minutes, I don't think it's a matter about how many minutes he gets. It's about how productive you are. Now, as far as him losing the minutes, if it seems that way, I'd have to check the numbers on it. A lot of that has to do with Mo Diabate. You got a guy who's emerged in this year on the season, and he's making big-time plays. He makes big plays in the clutch. Defensively, he can guard multiple positions. He's showing a lot more offensive skill that they're able to utilize. So, I mean, I wouldn't count too much into the number of minutes that any of the players have on the court. It's more so going to be about, what are you doing with the minutes that you have, and is it impacting the team in a positive way?
When you think about minutes and how it's managed, we actually played your clip for Bruce Pearl when we asked you about how he manages his bench. And you had an awesome answer about with NIL and where it is today and what some of these guys are getting. You feel like it's a lot easier to understand what your role or accept your role on a team because you're getting X $1,000 a year. And he's like, man, I haven't really thought of it that way. He goes, but I think it's an excellent answer from Richard. He said, I do think that has an effect on how things operate within our program. He said, but the other thing that I will tell you is this. He's like, we make it very clear to certain guys of this is how we anticipate it's going to go. And just because you don't start, it will be 18, 20 minutes off the bench. It's like Todd Pettiford, for example. He's like, he knew coming in that he probably wasn't going to be a starter for us, but he was going to play a lot and we were going to need him and he was going to do this for us. He said, whoever, whether it was Chaney kind of coming off the bench doing different things, he said, I just don't lie to the guys about what we expect their role to be. He said, we try to make it as clear as possible. And he kind of made a joke and he's like, listen, my son tells me, he's like, Coach, lie a little bit in recruiting. Like, help me out here just a little bit. He said, but because I think we lay it out in the manner of this is how we anticipate it's going to be, I think it's a lot easier for them to understand. It doesn't matter who starts. It doesn't matter who's first off the bench. And then, therefore, there is a much larger acceptance for how things are going to go. Yeah,
that's true. You want to be honest with them, but I would still lean on what I said. It's easier to be honest to people when you're paying them. I mean, if you can pay someone and say, hey, I'm paying you to come off the bench and this is your role.
It's a great point.
If you like the number that you're getting, you're going to come off the bench. Any person to do a job, the number, if you can get the number right, most people do almost anything. I mean, so it's a situation now that I think it's a positive because you take a guy like a Todd Pettiford, McDonald's All-American, probably could have gone anywhere he wanted. But if you throw in NIL and an opportunity for a coach to be honest and they can pay you something and you can understand that you can still be on a good team and play a role in a limited amount of minutes. If you didn't have that incentive, you might want to just go to the team that's going to give you the most minutes and let you play and get all of the glory. But the biggest thing that I take from it is more so not about the compensation, not about the minutes. It's the mentality of the players to be more professional. And when I say professional, I say that not just in a noun sense, but in an adjective. It's how they handle their business, what they're doing on the court, how they accept those moments of playing shorter minutes in different situations. And I've seen in so many teams, players that are immensely talented who've accepted their roles and played well in them. And that's how you need to play the game.
Richard Hendrix joining us in studio. He's with us each and every week. Thanks to our friends at Pizza Pulls. You can find them live on Fanatics Live if you're looking to get back into the card trading hobby. Fanatics Live and Pizza Pulls where you need to be. So this Alabama team and its depth, something that could be beneficial. You said that you're not overly concerned about how this Tennessee game went or what happened with Tennessee, but did they have the formula of what it might take to force Alabama to not advance in the tournament? How many teams have a similar formula to what you believe it may take to keep Alabama from going back to the Final Four?
Maybe only 5. I mean, that's just the reality. I mean, if you're going to fill out your bracket and you're looking at maybe if you're an Alabama fan, you feel like you might be disappointed in the season. You had high expectations, and as most Alabama fans do, and they think you're going to win every single game. This is still a great season and a great team. And it's ridiculous to jump off the bandwagon. But when you look at the bracket, what you want to look at is who's in your path to get to the Final Four and beyond. And if you don't see in the way a team like Tennessee that has veteran players, older players that can play defensive, strong basketball, Auburn, obviously, who's an older team who can play strong defense. Houston's another one who Alabama has beaten, who is an older team, can play tough defense and slow the game down. Michigan State and Tom Izzo, another one, Rick Pitino, those old school coaches that can grind it out. If they're not in your path, and even if they are, you just got to play them one time. You can still run the table. I mean, like, it's kind of like what Nick Saban would say about fans when they viewed Ohio State and losing that game. And it's like your team can still win the national championship. They had a lot of power as far as their personnel is concerned. It can be the same exact thing for Alabama. They get things going in the NCAA tournament. They can win the national championship.
All right, so Tennessee is second in the nation in opponent field goal percentage, 37%. A couple others you threw out there. Houston, 38%. St. John's is right there at 40%. Did those teams have enough offense to truly go win a national championship?
They definitely don't have much offense, in my opinion, compared to some of the other teams that can get out and score the basketball. But, I mean, defense does travel. I'm not so sure. I'm more of a person that leans. If I had to lean in a direction of my style, I would say I'm probably 51% more to the offensive side, to the defensive side. You got to get a bucket. And mainly in March, what happens when defenses get tight, you have to have a man who can get a bucket on his own, who can get in an island, get into the mid-range, hit a tough contested bucket when you need one. And you have to have that type of guy on your roster. Alabama had that last year when Aaron Estrada, he was a guy who was able to get a bucket in an isolation situation, get to the rim, be shifty, can go both ways, and he was able to be a big creator on that team. You have to have that type of talent on your roster to get it done in March.
So you've talked about Alabama and their style, and I brought it up a little bit earlier that it's when you watch football and you make a football reference, it feels like with 1,849 field goal attempts on the season, which I believe would be 4th or 5th nationally, by the way. Is it fair to make, I guess, a comparison from another football perspective of kind of some of Chip Kelly's Oregon teams or those Big 12 teams that we saw 8-9 years ago that could throw it all over the place? I don't want to say disregarded defense because Nate obviously doesn't disregard it, and he's up the ante on the defense and the physicality this year. But did they have a certain style that just, like we say this with Tennessee football right now, like the tempo is great, spreading you out is great, but when that thing moves into a phone booth, if a team can get it there, and not a ton of them can, it's just going to be a problem. And we kind of saw it with Tennessee again this year, even though they went out of their way to sort of offset that in the offseason. Is that a fair sort of comp for this Alabama basketball team? Like I say old school, it's not like that long ago, but those teams that could just throw it and go fast and like a Gus Malzahn Auburn football team, I guess.
It's the same thing. And like I would also probably say like some of those Oklahoma football teams that they had. You know, it's like you can beat everybody until you run into Georgia.
Well, they play some of those Oklahoma teams played Army.
Yeah.
Army gave them 8 possessions. I think it's maybe 7 possessions in the game, and it was like 21-14.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're really good at that, but if we don't let you do that, all of a sudden it's a problem.
It's a problem, but you have to first off have the personnel to even be able to play that way. And how many teams have the personnel to get physical, to match you talent for talent, guard their own? See, defensively, do you have the defensive skills to create that one-on-one matchup and make it a phone booth? You know, some teams like Tennessee, they can just say, hey, I can lock my man up and don't worry about all the help side defense, and I'm a good on-ball defender, and everybody else is a good off-ball defender. And then when you do beat someone occasionally, we got a rim protector who's 7 foot down there that can block a shot. Who has that type of personnel?
Right.
You got to look at the rankings and say, if there's 5-6 teams that have that, you have to run into one of those teams in your route to win the national championship. And if you don't, then you might have a great opportunity to get it done.
And there's a chance that some of those teams will see one another and pick each other off. So is Duke one of those teams? I know Duke has a lot of length. We haven't talked about, say, a Cooper Flagg, who's probably going to be the #1 overall pick. I assume they're a team that you believe can win a national championship, but also defensively from a length perspective, is that where they separate themselves from a lot of other teams?
Yeah, I mean, think so. When you have Cooper Flagg at 6'9", 6'10", and he has that type of versatility to guard a man on the perimeter, come over on the weak side and block shots. He rebounds. He leads the team in almost every statistical category. You got a 7'2" guy in the back in Malawach who can rim protect. Con Knippel's physical. I think they have some injury issues with Tyrese Proctor, which might impact him moving on in the season because he's important. But they have a good balance of youth and experience on the team, and they got great size. But they're another one of those teams that's just one of those teams that is built and constructed well. It's all about roster construction. Is your team constructed well to win against multiple styles? And those are the teams. Auburn's another one. They can win in multiple ways. It gives them an opportunity that they can be able to get a championship. But if you don't run into those teams, then a team like Alabama can get it done too.
Some people, Richard, would sit back and say, yeah, but Cooper Flagg's doing it against a down ACC. I would counter that with they're still beating everybody by 20 and 30 every night. They might not be all great, but people aren't paying attention to what Clemson's doing. They're having an amazing season. Louisville's still a really good basketball team. I think Wake and Carolina are good basketball teams, maybe not what they have been in the past, but how real is Cooper Flagg when you watch him, when you see just how impressive is what he's done this year?
He's the real deal. And to me, what's so impressive is a guy who reclassified 17, 18 years old to come out and do it with so much poise. I mean, he's shooting like 50% from 2. I mean, there's around 40 for 3. I mean, it's not like he's just jacking up shots. He's playing the game at a nice pace. He reads the situation. He hustles and plays hard. He's a two-way player. I mean, this is why people think that he has, this generational type talent, that he can do so many things. Now, I don't know how well that's going to translate over to him being a star in the NBA and leading a franchise on his own. But if he's a complimentary second man, you get that like a 1A, 1B type guy, then, I mean, he's special. But,
not to mention he's doing it at Duke.
Yeah.
It's not like he snuck up on the scene at even a Marquette or a Mercer or whatever. Like that's a massive spotlight day one. When you step on the court.
It is, and he's doing a phenomenal job. I mean, but you got to look at the age. He should still be playing in high school. Just look at that. That's what people got to look. It takes people in this era now. You got guys out here who have been playing college basketball for 5, 6, some even 7 years. So you have to judge the game in a lot of different ways. It's impressive that you see some guys in their performances in the dominant displays that they've had, but they're grown men playing with kids. And then you have some like Cooper Flagg who's dominating grown men, and he should still be in high school. Yeah, it's impressive.
I want to talk to you about defense and a certain part of it, something that I've heard Bruce Pearl reference multiple times, and you've actually talked about switching on defense, help side defense. Why that's going to be so important in March. We'll hit that next with Richard Hendrix here live on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Richard Hendrix, former Alabama great, former McDonald's All-American, joining us in studio now, ESPN analyst, and I think one of the up-and-comers when it comes to just analyzing basketball and giving you a different way to look at it, explaining it well. That's why we wanted to have him in studio for an extended conversation today. We mentioned defense in college basketball, and one of the things that really took me off guard, we had Bruce Pearl on before the Alabama game, and I asked him, I said, give us just something that has to happen for you guys to be successful. I know you don't want to give away your game plan or go too deep into it. He said, we have to be great with our switches on defense. When we switch on defense, it has to work. And I was thinking, yeah, okay, like I think everybody knows that. And I'm expecting him, Richard, to say, because if not, they're going to knock down 23s. But it was the exact opposite. He said, if we don't switch on defense, that's going to be a lot of easy layups and we're going to get worn out. And I'm like, hold on a second. What? And it just, for some of the untrained basketball minds and eyes like we have compared to you, why is that something that would happen that way for an Auburn defense against Alabama?
Well, first thing with Auburn, you have to always start with personnel. If I'm telling anybody who's watching basketball, watch the personnel and see how the pieces work together. And Auburn has good positional size, guys who have length, and they're good at the switchability. But your details and how you switch. Are you at the level of the screen? Are you communicating? Are you allowing someone to get a corner so they can go downhill and get an easy layup? All of those things are so important because what you're trying to do is limit your rotations. You don't want to get beat where you're forcing someone else to have to come over and help, and then you're rotating all around trying to chase guys. When you're chasing people, they're able to use the shot fake, use a quick step, and they're able to get all the way to the basket. And if you overhelp, they kick it out and you get a wide open three. So the details that if you're meeting teams at the level of the screen and switching and communicating, it allows people to not get into the paint easily, and it makes the structure of your defense be much stronger.
Okay, so let's start with what makes you good as a defense, being able to switch. You mentioned a couple of things there. Communication. I'm sure a lot of it is technique that we don't understand. You and I are making the comparison in the commercial break to watching a pass rush situation where a lot of guys just think Khalil Mack just wins. Well, there's a lot of things that probably went wrong with the tackle there. We won't get into all that, but just I'm sure technique has a lot to do with it as well, with why defense would be good at switching.
Well, first off, if you want a good defense, you need your offense to score the basket. If you score a basket, you're able to get back and set up. And the next thing you want to look at is you have to be strong in transition defense to not let a team, after you have a miss, to barrel down on you to get the numbers and get the easy layups. But once you get set, it's all about making sure that you're down in the stance, being connected in the position where you are, as far as being up on ball pressure. Good on ball pressure defenders are huge, that you don't allow players to pinpoint passes all around. But then what you want to do is be connected in these ball screen actions. When teams are coming off the pick and rolls, if you have the ability to switch, if you're able to switch off ball, which Auburn can do really, really well, then that eliminates the play. It keeps everything in a situation where you have a man-on-man scenario and you don't allow the screens that someone else to take to be effective. So that's the biggest reason that you want to be engaged on the defensive end and getting back quickly, getting set up, and then being in tune so you don't allow teams to be able to get into the paint easily, because when that happens, bad things take place.
Go back to transition defense. You said you have to be good at that. And maybe this is just kind of not a big deal, whatever. There was one play that I was watching. I had a pretty good angle of the court for Auburn, Kentucky. And it's a kind of a quick rebound, and Auburn's coming back transition defense. And a guy who we've talked about, Amari Williams for Kentucky, who I have a whole new respect for. Just his game, so much more fluid, so much better touch. And a guy who's at 7'1", more of a facilitator than actually a big, but did a great job defensively on Broome as well. He's the first one down the floor. And it was just this little subtle point. Janai Broome to Chaney Johnson. He was like, kind of just gave him a little finger up in the air. And Johnson immediately takes Williams. And all of a sudden, he's not open at the end of the floor. And Broome has to take somebody at the top of the floor. Is transition defense like that simple of just communicating of, I'm not going to be down there. If you don't take him, we're in trouble. And then they know we got to switch here.
It can be, yes. And that's the communication you have. But the luxury is the part that Janai Broome has a 6'7", 235-pound Chaney Johnson that he can point to and switch.
Fair.
Because the difference
is, Pettiford, he might not be making that point.
If that's Pettiford, then he gets ducked in by the 7-foot Amari Williams, and it's a foul or a layup. So when you have the personnel that you can just in a bad situation point to your teammate and say, hey, you take him and I take your guy, and everybody's comfortable, then that's a win. The challenge on teams that don't have the personnel is that they really have to be disciplined. If that was a situation where the little man was back and Janai Broome was behind the break, he would have to put his foot on the gas and get back into the play to get in front of Amari Williams to not allow anything bad to happen. Because when you get off schedule and he's not with the right player, you're going to create a breakup in the defense somewhere else that's going to take place. So that's why the transition defense is huge. It's the number one thing that you want to work on as a team at the beginning of your defense, to not give up the easy baskets and to keep the integrity and the structure of the defense.
I love how this keeps coming full circle. They say life comes full circle, right? Like, you keep coming back to it. At the end of the day, like you've said multiple times on the show today, if you have good players, you're probably going to win some games.
It's that simple.
And you keep saying too, like personnel. Like almost every question I've asked you said, well, let's look at the personnel first. If you got good people, you're going to figure out how to win games.
I don't care if you're out here coaching your 8-year-old son's team or 6-year-old daughter's team, the team that has the better players, the bigger, stronger athletes, the more coordinated people with the better sports IQ, you're going to have a better chance of winning the game. And the lesser talent that you have, that's when the coaching and the training comes in. And how can you have your team to be on the same page? Can they play with synergy? Can they communicate? Are they well trained to handle the moments of pressure? And then when that's the case, if you still are out, personnel, I guess if that's a word, you just got to have a little bit of luck down the stretch to win games.
All right, so let's go to something that may be high IQ or elite coaching. I saw it work in person a little bit. I've seen it on television a couple of times this year, and I've heard more and more people begin to talk about it. And that is Bruce Pearl's teams out of timeouts. That one set play coming out of a break and how good they are at it. Why?
Well, they're mature. And when you're mature and when you have the physical presence of a Janai Broome who can catch the basketball anywhere, that's a luxury. You touched a little bit. We talked about Alabama early on the show and their struggles in the last play to be able to get the ball in on the baseline out of bounds. If you got a guy who can just shield a man off with one arm and put a hand up and just catch the ball, it's a luxury to have. But they do a really good job because you have to respect the shooters that are coming off of screens. You have to respect guys who are cutting to the basket, because not only do they have the positional size with players that can shoot on the outside, Miles Kelly, Baker Mazzara, they can all finish at the cup. So it's a pick your poison. Right. Which way are you going to play your defense? Are you going to funnel them out? Or are you going to funnel them in? And when you have that type of balance, that's exactly what you want to have as an offensive player, where the defense has to be honest in everything that you're doing.
How much is it too? You've mentioned maturity and having older guys, and this Auburn team, obviously a little bit of an older team than some others, is that you're quickly able to put more on them. Like this is, for example, again, I got to go football here. So we met with Jackson Dart middle of last year, and we kind of got the conversation to, well, how much can you guys change in game? And he was like, you don't understand. Like, Lane will come to us and put in a play that we've never worked. We've never practiced it. We've never repped it. And he said, hey, they're running this way. He said, here's what we're going to do. The X is going to take this here. He's going to run the slant. He's like, we're going to put the motion over here to pull this backer off of him. We're going to hit the go right over there. He's like, Coach, what's this called? He goes, I don't know. Just run it. But Jackson Dart had been with him for 3 years, and they knew how to operate. They had some receivers that had been in their system, and Caden Priestcorn played a ton of football. So like, they had these guys that had done it. How much does Bruce benefit from having guys that he can just say in the middle of a game, we've never worked this before, like, hey, run the screen down here. We're going to come off the ball this way, and Chad Baker's going to get the shot up top. And he can just put that in because he has guys that have done so much. They played so much basketball.
Oh, yeah, it's huge. And it's not only the fact that you have guys who have played together, which he has a lot, which is also a big credit to what he's been able to do to retain players within the program in a time to do that. But when you have experienced players who have seen those situations before, you don't have to do as much teaching. You can even pull out an old play that you were able to run last season and say, do you remember what we did last year when this happened? Switch this, switch that. That's how we're going to guard it. And guys will be able to go into that memory bank and really be able to lean on it. Experience is the key. And I think coaches have really figured that out in college basketball, that you want to get older, and you want to get older as quick as possible. Now, I hate it because—
it's like what Pitino said the other day. He's literally not going to recruit high school guys anymore.
Why would you? Why would you? Why if you want to win, do I want to—
if it's Cooper Flagg, I know why I would.
Yeah.
If it's Stephon Castle, I know why I would, but
Okay, but it falls off tremendously after that. It falls off tremendously after that. If I can go get a 23-year-old who's been trained by another college coach, he's been in the weight room for 3 years, he has big game experience, he understands the sense of urgency because he's now coming to a better name brand situation and he wants to improve himself for a professional prospect. Why would I do that as opposed to getting some kid who's just been playing against, his high school league? I mean, it's just, I hate it for high school kids.
Absolutely,
I hate it for high school sports. I hate it for the pressure that high school kids have to feel that they need to have to start transferring out and putting themselves in these other schools that are not a part of the community. Because high school sports, to me, it's about your community. It's about the school. It's about your friends playing with it. It's about
guys
competing.
you grew up with.
Yeah. I mean, they just had the state championships right here in Birmingham down the road. That's what it's all about. It's not about loading up with another group of guys that you don't know, trying to prepare yourself for the next level and thinking you're going to be on the fast track to the NBA. I mean, listen, it's a numbers game. It's only 450 jobs. The odds of you making it are not going to happen. You're probably going to be better off to have those memories with the guys you grew up with and see if you can win a state championship. That's just how I feel about it. Because on the next level, with the system the way it is now, they're not going to recruit you anyway. So enjoy it.
Could you even fathom, like you mentioned, and obviously your dad coached you for a long time, but the guys, because I think it's interesting from your perspective, you talked earlier about going to the gym and just playing basketball with your buddies. That probably wasn't super challenging for you. But also, could you have imagined going into your last year of high school just saying, nah, I'm going over here?
Oh, no way.
But not even the basketball portion, Richard, the going to school every day.
Oh, no way.
Like all of a sudden you've gone to school for 11 years and you're just going to say, oh, I'm going to go to a new classroom, new school, new parking, new people, new teachers, new friends. And then just so you could play some basketball. I from a football perspective, I can't fathom that.
And never. I mean, me neither. I mean, especially in high school. I'm from a tight-knit community, smaller town. We played for a state championship in the BJCC in 2004. And, I'm playing with, of the 12 of us on the team, I believe 9 of us all went to the same elementary school. There's only one high school, one middle school, and we had 4 elementary schools. You grow up with each other. You develop this type of connection with each, and we have a bond to this day. We lost a state championship game, but we still talk about it. You can still remember it. And it was just a great experience of the whole town coming down from North Alabama and being in Birmingham and supporting that group that everyone's followed. You have a different set of pride when you're able to play on the high school level with people that you grew up with a community behind you. And I think those memories are more important than some of these things when you're trying to chase a situation to improve yourself on the next level. Because you're going to find out on the next level, oftentimes, it's a perception that you were really, really good on that high school, and you get there and you find out a lot of guys are sitting on the bench. What would you rather trade? The opportunity of thinking you're going to improve yourself or, maybe doing the same thing with the people that you know and love?
Richard Hendrix joining us in studio, ESPN basketball analyst, obviously played at Alabama, played at Athens High School, sharing some of those memories, which is really cool to hear. There are some misnomers and maybe some just nomers on tournament basketball. I want to ask you about a couple of those. What teams might be best to manage that and how just real are some of those things? We'll talk NCAA tournament next with Richard Hendrix on McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. All right, welcome back in. McElroy and Cubelic in the morning. Little ways to go left with Richard Hendrix, former Alabama great, in studio. I want to talk NCAA tournament basketball. Why is it different? What's different about it? I want Richard to share some of his experiences of just how quickly things can change once you get into that NCAA tournament. And your CBD store wants to help you change your life. They can do it quickly. If it's arthritis, anxiety for you or your pet, they have products that can help with that at the largest brick-and-mortar CBD retailer in the world. First company to have USDA certified organic oil supplements if it's weight loss, that's trimmed by SunMed, on the shelves now at your CBD store. Multiple products to help with a better night's sleep, multiple products to help you better focus throughout the course of the day. Visit one of their 3 locations, Highway 280 by Bailey Brothers, 150 by the Cage in Cleaver, Trustful just off 459. Your CBD store where good health hits home. They always say this time of year, Richard, that guard play wins tournament games. How real is that? And if it is, why?
Well, defenses get tighter. They're not going to let you get to the basket. I mean, post players, to me, in big games, your game is the first 35 minutes of the game. And when you ever look historically, when a game-winning shot is on the line, you have to have the ball in the guard's hand and let him create. And when guards can get things going from the outside, being tough shot makers, I mean, it really changes the whole flow of the game. It opens up driving lanes. It takes the breath out of defenses. When you're hitting tough contested shots, and that's why you have to have your guards step up in the money time. And the teams that have the best backcourts will always have a chance in the March.
Yeah, because those bigs don't really get the final shot a whole lot.
I wouldn't give it to them. Why? And I'm a big. Listen, and I want the ball in my hand. If you gave me the ball at the end of the game, I'm probably going to give it back to a guard, set a screen, or get out of his way and get ready to jock for position to get an offensive rebound putback. I mean, what's going to happen? If you give it to a big down the stretch and you foul him, and he's a 50% free throw shooter, you got a liability on the line, a lot of pressure. I mean, like, he can't create a lot of things with the ball himself to get a shot with the contest. He has to turn his back to the defense if he starts operating in the low post, which is going to bring on a trap. The trap's going to come from the weakest guy. He's going to have to pass it out to the weakest guy. Now you're asking the weakest guy to shoot a shot? No, just get out of his way.
It's a totally fair point. So when you look at this tournament, what do you feel like is going to be needed the most? A little bit more in depth than just guard play. Is it perimeter defense? Is it depth? Is it maybe being able to win in transition offensively, defensively? Based on some of the better teams that you think have a chance to win a title, what are some of the most important factors that are going to have to show up in March for a team to actually cut down the nets?
I always think it's going to be timely shot making. I mean, like, it's just – when you get in the NCAA tournament, I've played in a few of those games, every possession, it seems different than the regular season. It's magnified. You can feel the pressure. You know that it's win or go home. If a team goes on a run, a 4-0 run, 6-0 run, you know that I have to make a stand right now or the season is over. So how do you respond when that team goes on that 6-0 run to make a big basket? Are you executing well to keep the game within balance? And then when you get down to the big moments, do you have the confidence to step up and stick one? And that's what it takes in the NCAA tournament. It's going to come down to those type of wills and that attitude to get it done in those situations. And you got to have the timely buckets because you feel the pressure on every play.
When you look at this Auburn team, you talked about Janai Broome playing with his back to the basket and how just different that is, that not a lot of teams get it. You don't have to face it a whole lot. You don't have to defend it a whole lot. And we've also discussed that, Saturday afternoon, Amari Williams did a really good job against it. How many teams are there out there that can negate him, can offset him the way that Kentucky did Saturday?
Not many. I mean, this is why he's a front runner to be the National Player of the Year. Now, if you have good size, and Kentucky does with some 7-footers down low, Alabama has good size to be able to make it difficult to show him angles where you don't have to overhelp. The luxury that Janai Broome has is his ability to command a real double team. And he uses a move that the Auburn fans, it's called the Barkley. Like, what he does is when he catches the ball in the post, he can be pushed off the block and even catch the ball almost at the 3-point line. And when he backs his man down with slow dribbles, taking his time, that allows him to survey the court. He's looking for shooters all around, And if you don't bring the double team, then he knows he can go one-on-one.
Right.
And that was a move that Charles Barkley made famous in the NBA because he used to catch the ball in the perimeter and he would use his backside to back a guy down all the way to the basket and score a layup. And they outlawed the move that you can't slowly back a man down for 5 seconds with the dribble below the free throw line. But you can do it in the collegiate game, and Janai Broome does it better than anyone else. And it's a tough thing to guard when you have that type of skill set that he has with his size and his weight and balance.
The difference when Amari Williams was not defending him or came out of the game and Brandon Garrison was almost on him, it went immediately to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, he just literally shoved him down underneath the goal, and it was easier baskets. It's Williams was able to offset it a little bit, but then all of a sudden a different defender comes in, and it's just there you go, right back underneath the basket. And he can give you right or left. He can give you a little jump hook. He's got the fadeaway that works a lot of times, and it was trouble for Kentucky at that point.
Yeah. See, I look at it, and obviously I like Janai Broome's game. His game is similar to what I had, and particularly as what I developed in. So when I watch him to play, I understand how to read those situations. The crazy thing now is that, in the SEC in which I played, every team had that guy.
Right.
Every team had two of those guys. You look at Alabama when I was there, even the guys before, Dudley, Jamario Davidson, Chuck Davis, myself, Jermichael Green coming after. You go to Mississippi State, Mario Austin, Charles Rhodes. Every team, Dwayne Curtis at Ole Miss, every team had a big you could throw the ball in that could play the back against the back. Big Baby and Brandon Bass at LSU.
Whoa.
I mean, so everybody had multiple of those players. But now that's no longer the case. And with that, it makes Janai Broome a unicorn. And he's a load to stop, but in order to stop it, you first have to have a guy who can match his size and strength and weight. And if you're not 6'9", 6'10", 250 pounds, then you're going to be in a problem, because what happens is when he plays with his back to you, when you lean on him, he's able to use leverage to spin and roll off of you in any direction. Watch him when you play. The guys who are playing defense, they have to put their all into him and lean, putting their forearm into him, and that gets you off balance, and he uses your balance and leverage against you to get easy baskets.
You mentioned how teams had multiple. I went back to the 06 SEC rebounders. Tyrus Thomas also there with Big Baby at LSU.
He was.
I mean, those two were 1 and 2 in rebounds in the league. You and Jamario were 3rd and 4th. How about this one? You forgot to mention Joakim Noah and Al Horford.
How do you forget the back-to-back national champions? See, that's what you're dealing with. And they also had a draft pick in Chris Richard, who came off the bench, who never started at Florida, but was like the 45th pick in the 2006 or 2007 NBA draft. And they had Maurice Spates, who was a first-round pick in my draft in 2008 on that roster. So every team, that was what you looked for. It was a premium to have bigs who were at least 6'8", 240 pounds that you give it to. And if you didn't have that guy on your team, then you weren't going to be able to compete. Now, if you got a guy who's 6'9", 6'10", 250 pounds, you have a rare guy. And if he can play with the basketball, he's really special.
Yep.
So the game has changed with how you teach post play. No one can do it. It's like football. We have to make our football analogy.
Absolutely.
How many of these quarterbacks do you see that can get under center and take a ball? Like, no, who huddles up?
Jackson Dart went to the Senior Bowl and couldn't do it.
You know,
I mean, he apparently is draft stock for a day, because then he came back and threw really well, but like he could not take a snap under center. We had the conversations with Will Rogers at Mississippi State when they switched offenses, and he came in, he said, I had taken 2 snaps under center in my life. This was a 4th-year senior in college who had taken thousands of snaps in live games, and he said, I couldn't do it. I had never done it.
See, and that for me, when I judge players today, I always have to take in the situations and everything to say, when someone's saying this guy's the best player that a school has ever had, I have to look at the system, the personnel, the style of play, the possessions, to really make an assessment on how good that player is. You talk about on the football side, like this was football 101. I played football. The coach grabs a wide receiver by his face mask or shoulder pad. You tell him to play. He runs in, tells the quarterback communicates everybody to huddle. You break the play. You come out there and you use your snap count and you get to going. And now I look at the game and everybody's standing out there clapping. It's like, what is this?
Yep.
And you get in the huddle now and nobody understands what to do in a situation. And when Michigan plays Alabama a couple years ago and they're huddling up, the defense has never seen anybody break the huddle.
I think Saban said it. He's like, we didn't know how to handle a huddle.
It's the same thing now when you're watching basketball. When someone ducks in and posts up, these players act like they've seen some type of monster. And it's ridiculous. I mean, like the post-up play is something that happens every single possession down the court. That's what we're looking for. Rim run, get 2 foot right there under the goal in the paint, and get the easy basket. And now when they have to play post defense, and also offensively, if they're not running a pick and roll, people don't know what to do. They don't know how to screen away to the other person or cut. The only action they know how to do is go run a pick and roll. And it's really ridiculous, and it really hurts them when they move forward in the next level professionally because they've never seen these things.
It's wild to think about. Richard Hendrix in studio for one more segment. When we come back, we will, I guess, go back to the bad box score of the day, see if Richard's a fan or not. Next on Mac and Cube in the morning. Heard Pat Smith mentioned it there. A 3-man front coming up after us right here on Jocks 94.5. Not just Alabama starting spring practice today. Coastal Carolina, Kennesaw State, Louisville, Miami, Rice, Texas State, Virginia, all going to start spring practice today. So we will obviously recap a little bit of that tomorrow, give you some thoughts on it, how it looked, and what you can expect moving forward as McElroy will be back to talk some Alabama football after the first day of spring practice tomorrow. There's a reason Auburn Athletics hand-selected Andrews Sports Medicine's Dr. Ben Nimble and Dr. Charles Pitts to serve as their team physicians. They provide the highest quality of sports medicine care in an effort to keep the Tigers student-athletes safe, healthy, and competing at the highest level. If Andrews Sports Medicine is a choice for Auburn Athletics, there's no doubt they should be your family's number one choice for sports medicine and orthopedic care. Andrews Sports Medicine has 7 locations across central Alabama from Birmingham, Coleman, Gardendale, Hoover, Pelham, and Trussville. Offers same-day, next-day appointments for acute sports injuries. Visit andrewsportsmedicine.com today to begin your journey of achieving victory over injury. All right, Richard Hendrix, you've been with us for almost 2 hours now. Appreciate the time. We have a segment that we once did and kind of got out of it because the listeners were complaining. Now the listeners say they want it back. We need cooperation with it. So we will go to scores. You just give us your thoughts, and maybe I'll ask you what the mascot was. And sometimes people like to try to guess to see what that mascot was. But this is the bad box score of the day.
Personal foul, 69. Offense. He was giving them the business.
Intentional grounding. Offense number 7. It's a 10-yard penalty. I'm talking to America here. Excuse me.
That's the game.
The score that sort of brought this thing back was we'll go college baseball first. The Columbia.
They're the Lions.
They are the Lions.
Yeah.
Yep. They just went down to the Oregon
Ducks.
In all 3 games over the weekend. However, the initial game of the series in which they lost the other 2 8-3 and 7-0.
Okay, that's fine. Admirable.
Was 35-1.
I'm sorry, what?
Oregon scored 35, and Columbia scored 1.
In one game?
Just one game.
One game.
Yeah, eight and a half innings of baseball.
Like in public. Like people saw
Correct.
this.
Yes. Yeah.
They let this happen.
Yes.
Ugh.
For the game, Oregon had 25 hits to Columbia's 4.
Oh, all right.
On the game.
Man, come on. At what point do you start to trick plays like in Rookie of the Year? I got to hide a ball at first base.
Throwing underhand?
Man, I'm doing all of that. Like, you're not going to 31-point me out here. No, we're getting out.
It was led by Ryan Cooney, second baseman for Oregon, who went 4 for 4.
Okay.
Scored 5 runs and drove in 6 for the game.
Just 6?
That's
it's actually
it.
kind of weak given it 35.
Carter Great, 2 for 2, scored 4, drove in 4.
Okay.
There were only 6 players with multiple hits for Oregon in the game. And
That's who they needed to stop.
As you can imagine, the pitching numbers for Columbia, not great. Thomas Santana started the game. He went 1 2/3, gave up 4 hits, 6 runs. All 6 were earned. Walked 3, struck out 2. But then Evan Clyhans came in the game. He pitched 2 innings.
How did he do?
They gave up 7 hits.
Okay.
They managed 12 runs on those 7 hits.
It was his fault.
He needed the trick plays.
Only 11 of the 12 were earned.
Come
He
on.
walked 4 and did not strike out a batter in the whole game. So let's go over to maybe something Richard will be a little more.
You know what gets me on that one, though?
Sure.
I checked that out. You know, they were the home team, so they came out and they hit first. They got down 2-0. And then it was a 2-1 game.
Yes.
So it was a 2-1 game, and then the other team just goes on a 30-0 run on you in baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, they had to have some hope for a minute there. They thought they were rolling and back in the game, and then that happens. That's tough.
I actually asked you, do you know that you're on those runs in basketball? You said yes. Do you think Oregon knew they were on that run in baseball?
Yeah.
I feel like they had an idea.
Jeffrey broke out Lucille.
That
That
was
point,
taking
it
case.
was
Yeah.
over.
All right, this is in men's basketball, by the way, junior college basketball Division II. The Scottsdale Community College.
They are the Eagles?
They're not.
No. They are the Scotsmen.
They are not.
Oh, that'd have been obvious. Okay.
Don't look at me.
You don't even want to take a shot at it?
Tigers, just like everybody else.
Maybe it's actually a great guess.
Of course.
But when we get to
when
when we get to some of these, Richard, you have to kind of take a different guess. They're the Hoax, and they took on the Hoax. It's honestly, it looks like a green plant. I don't know what it's even supposed to be. Actually,
It's called Toke.
They just went down to the Pima Community College.
They're the Panthers.
They're not.
No. They are the
Pima Pumas.
Another good guess.
Penguins.
They're actually the Aztecs.
Oh, makes sense. All right.
Real close.
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
The Aztecs just snuck this one out 122-57 over the weekend.
That's a double up.
Your score at the half, 64-18.
Okay.
Basketball.
Correct.
You know, I
Full
don't know
game
what
of it.
I don't know what these sports
Yeah,
are, and you hearing
honestly,
these. I mean, come on.
This may not make it better. I don't know. Could have been football.
Pima Community College, Richard shot 45 of 70 for the game, 16 of 32 from behind the three-point
They
line.
got hot.
They were beyond hot in this game. 7 players hit multiple threes for Pima Community College. All 5 starters in double figures, and Brock Mendoza off the bench had 12.
Come on now.
You mad because you not?
Now, for Scottsdale Community College, managed just 24 of 75 from the floor. They did shoot 23 threes.
Okay.
How many
That's
did they
fine.
make?
Just 4.
Oh, okay. Well,
They did shoot 11 free throws.
How many
All
did they make?
Only 5.
So it was just cold. It was just cold. It happens.
Man,
cold-blooded.
It just happens.
Well, they were only out rebounded 49 to 28.
Come on now. See, you don't even give a team that many rebounding opportunities. Don't shoot it. Hold it. Let the shot clock run out, and we just like, come on now.
They limited it to just 15 turnovers for the game. So
they were just cold. It happened.
we didn't even get to the Hofstra women over William and Mary 54 to 34.
In what?
Basketball. A full game of
and
it.
sadness. That's what it was.
William and Mary shot 14 of 59 from the floor, 3 of 17 from 3. They did shoot 10 free throws.
How many did they make?
Just 3 of
Ooh.
10.
See, come on.
Is this a celebrity all-star game? Like, that was bad.
They had 4 offensive rebounds in the game.
Per person?
So, Richard, should we keep or distinguish bad box score? of the
Man,
day?
keep the bad beats.
There you go.
But we need to do it in a segment earlier so you come back after so you can break down that action on how you don't let that happen. My goodness.